Good morning and welcome to ShedTastic Thursday, the final day of the 2021 ShedFest. I'm Charlie Bethel. I'm the Chief Officer for UK Men's Sheds, and we've got a packed program this morning on this last day. We will start with talking to some of the sheds that will come for the Shed Pallet Challenge, which I'll introduce in a moment. Then we have a session around UK MSA, what is a men's shed and how do they work and why do they work. That's focused very much on our external audiences, those people interested in developing a shed or people that we try to influence like local authorities or MPs. And then there's a session that's going to be led by Rachel and Patrick Abrahams around social prescribing with Dr. Chris Manning. And that session is going to look at social prescribing in sheds, how it works, where it doesn't work, and also look at referrals as well. So, good morning, Facebook user, and I'm looking forward to the Shed Pallet Challenge too, and I'll ask if they've got ambulances ready. So, we are joined this morning by the Milton Keynes Shed and the Lions Den Shed. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
Right. So, MK, if I come to you first, it's Nigel. What makes your shed unique?
Well, I think one of the things that makes our shed quite unique is that it's extremely large. We're lucky enough to have a full-size industrial unit. You can probably see one corner of it on the screen. You're looking at the woodwork shop, and just across the other side of the unit, we've got the metalwork shop. Upstairs is one of the other things that makes our shed unique, is that we work in tandem with the Milton Keynes Makerspace, who tend to be much, on the whole, younger guys who've got full-time jobs, who are much more, so they come in the evenings mostly. And they work much more with electronics and with things like 3D printing, CAD, laser cutting and things like that. So it's a really good symbiosis between the shed, which is much more of a traditional shed, and the makerspace, because we help them with some of the basic construction stuff, and they help us when we want to do stuff with electronics and 3D printing, for instance.
That sounds really good. We had a session last night on Raspberry Pi, and the number of applications that we could see, even for the scarecrows I have to make once a year.
Yeah, well, there's certainly
to integrate them.
Quite a few guys upstairs, and a few girls as well, I should say, who are into Raspberry Pis in a big way. Yeah.
Also, we're international with all the people.
Yeah, we've got quite a big spread of nationalities in our membership. That's quite true, as Dave says.
Very good. Now, talking about international, we have our own north-south divide in the UK, which apparently exists everywhere in the world. And so this is really a battle of north versus south. So, Alan, Lions Den in Keighley, why is your shed unique?
Oh, yeah, it's outside Leeds. It's huge. Yeah. Good old Yorkshire.
Alan, can we hear you?
We've got an escapee down here.
No, Alan's frozen at the moment. We'll see if he can come back. He's thinking. Okay, so MK, if we come back to you, if I can call you MK, how long did it take you to dismantle your pallets? Or have you not dismantled them?
I'm looking at Dave.
Well, we were lucky. We had some very large pallets, which is about 12 foot long, and we just used jigsaw to do it.
That's yes. I'm not going to say that's cheating at all. I did drive past some very large pallets the other day and thought,
It will all be done manually online. Yeah.
And any clues on what you're thinking of making?
A potting table.
Yeah, a potting table, and if we have time, and we've got leftover wood, we're going to try and make a
wheelbarrow planter.
A wheelbarrow planter.
A wheelbarrow planter. Oh, that should be very good. Right, let's have a look. Alan's here now. Alan, hello. Alan, can you hear me? Oh, he's frozen again. Hang on, the other feed's not coming through yet. Okay, we've got some technical challenges with the North at the moment. But this is really going to be a battle of North versus South. We've got some movement. Hi, Alan.
Buffering. There he is again.
Alan, can you hear us?
Have we won by default?
No, you've not won by default at all. They can send in pictures. And yeah, and as I live in the Midlands, which is non-partisan, I can say.
Hi.
Hi, Alan. Are you all ready?
This keeps buffering.
No, we've lost him.
They've got a very poor connection by the looks of it.
Yeah, it is a poor connection there. Let's just see if the other stream that we're getting from Lions Den is working. Hello, Lions Den. You can see you on the camera. You can see there's space out there, and I know the Lions Den has one of the unique things about the Lions Den. For those of you that haven't heard Alan speak, is that they have a big fish pond as well with koi carp.
Hello, this is the Lions Den second camera.
They have a koi carp. Alan, can you hear us now? Alan,
Are you?
we have you.
I can. The trouble is, the signal keeps dropping out. It was fine when they were on. As soon as it came to us, it started dropping out. I think it's a southern ploy. Sabotage.
They have just asked if they can win by default, but I've said that you could probably use pigeons to send pictures down.
Hang on, there's two Northerners here.
He's gone again. Right. Well, we'll come back to MK until we can get Alan back. And so you a planter with a wheelbarrow planter and a potting table. That sounds very good. The other week, because you should always try things yourself, I decided to take a pallet apart and make a stand for some plant pots at home. And after I took the first piece of wood off, the first panel, I decided to step backwards and put 2 nails into the underneath my feet. So, is your ambulance ready and waiting for you?
We're lucky. The ambulance station is just around the corner.
Well, hopefully you won't be doing what I did. So it's hopefully you'll be a lot safer and actually have probably better footwear than sandals. So okay, I have a question. There is a question for me. What is the question? Could we have the question up? Did the rules say it should be a 1x2? No, it didn't, sadly, or rightly so. I mean, if a shed has been clever enough to go out and find some larger pallets, then all well and good. That's and I'm quite pleased with that. So what I was expecting with one of the sheds that was hopefully going to join but couldn't was then to take apart a piece of 18th century furniture and then claim that they've made it by pallet. So at least we're not seeing that happen. Right. Okay. We will reconnect with the Lions Den later on. At the moment, we're going to in a minute we're going to move over to the first presentation. But I just want to wish you the very best of luck. If there are questions throughout the day that people have for the pallet competition, please send them in to us and the studio. And we will get those questions asked when we come back. And we're intending to come back to the Lions Den and to MK at 12 o'clock. So wishing you the very best of luck. Please stay safe. Don't tread on any nails like I did. And good luck.
Charlie, could you just remind us, we didn't quite catch what the Lions Den are making.
The Lions Den are making an aeroplane that will fly. And a car. No, I have no idea. They wouldn't tell me.
Okay, right. Ambitious. Okay, we'll sign off then, and we'll speak to you again. We'll come back online just before 12.
Yeah, we'll see you at 12. Good luck.
Okay.
All right.
Bye. Good luck.
Cheers.
With the rest of the session. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Okay. Thank you, Lions Den. So in a moment, we'll move over to the presentation about what is a men's shed and how do they work and where do they come from. We will also try and contact and connect with Alan Clark at the Lions Den. So hi all, I'm going to be starting making some things from pallets shortly. Are you using pallets that have been kiln dried from pesticides? Oh, we have no idea. We have no idea. We will ask that question. Oh, we may also have the Lions Den trying to reconnect. I don't see them. No, this is very bad broadcasting. So if we can move over, I'd like to introduce the members of the panel for the next session. I will be making a small presentation and then we'll have a panel conversation, and we'll talk about the pros of working with sheds. And so if I could introduce Johnny Wood, who works in both Norfolk and Suffolk with men's sheds. Good morning, Johnny. Johnny, can you hear us? These did all work on the tech check.
Morning all, you all right?
Oh, yeah, good. Welcome, and Rob Vicentena as well.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Did check
yes,
on
Johnny.
the chat yet. Hang on, are we there yet?
Johnny, we've got a little bit of a lag on you. We'll try and get that sorted as we do the presentation. So we'll ask Laura, one of our producers, if we can try and
Can
sort
you
that out.
can hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes, but there's a little bit of a lag.
Right.
Okay, so we'll move over to the presentation.
Okay.
We'll welcome people that join us now. So welcome to those people who are joining for the session about what is a men's shed and how do they help.
You can hear
and
me.
Why should we have them?
I think we've got a bit of a time delay.
Yeah, we have. So
Meantime.
So we'll drop you backstage, Johnny and Rob. But we'll go through the presentation, and hopefully that will all be sorted by the time we come back, as will our connection to the Lions Den. So if we can start with the presentation that I've pre-prepared. As a group, we will take questions at the end of the presentation. So if we could go full screen, that would be wonderful on the presentation. So welcome. For those of you that are joining us from other organisations to the last day of ShedFest, our ShedTastic Thursday. And a particular welcome to charities, local authorities and supporters of the UK men's shed movement. This session is aimed principally at our partners and future partners to tell you a little bit about men's sheds and what's involved. If we could move to in Chris Whitty style, if we could move to the next one. We will touch on a number of areas. We will talk about what is a men's shed, UK Men's Sheds Association and what we do, and then when we chat to Rob and to Johnny, we'll talk about what they do in their different areas. So Johnny's involved in a couple of networks, regional networks, and Rob is with Men's Sheds Cymru in Wales. And if we go to the next slide, please. And to the next slide. So there's a page of woe, and the page of woe is some of the challenges that we're seeing in the world at the moment, particularly, or in the UK, particularly around men and loneliness. And 76% of suicides are with men who have rather than women. So men are more likely to end their lives through suicide. There's increased unemployment, particularly hitting men through COVID-19, and men were twice as likely to die from COVID at the height of the epidemic than women were. Also that we have over 1 million people in the UK saying that loneliness, they don't speak to people for over a month. They go without talking to friends or to neighbours or anybody in their family, and 41% of people feel lonely each day, each week, sorry. So if we could go to the next slide. So what is a men's shed? Men's sheds are a number of things, and we talk about the characteristics. And sheds are one option. They are one solution. Now, we think that they're the best solution. And when we look at our statistics later, you'll see why we feel that. But sheds are about friendships. They're inclusive environments. They work in the community. They're part of the community. They're about making and doing. They're safe environments for men to do stuff, to make stuff or fix stuff or repurpose. And they're all autonomous. This is really important. They're all autonomous from UK Men's Sheds Association. And as a result, they are all very different. And we see regional differences, and we see differences across across the one shed that's next door to the next. Okay, if we could go to the next one, please. And so sheds make all sorts of things. They do carving. They make trinkets. They make puppets, as you can see there from Men's Sheds Cymru, one of the puppets that they've made. And they make a variety of other things as well. If we could just click. They make coracles. Coracles are those inverted domes or dishes that people like to go in, 3,000-year-old boats. They make bird boxes. They make and fix furniture. Lots and lots of Christmas decorations at Christmas. You'll see men's sheds in the markets. And one of the big things that sheds do is turning, and you'll over 25,000 now bowls or trinkets are made every year on lathes through men's sheds. Okay, if we could go to the next slide, please. So we did a questionnaire. We then did some surveys, some specific surveys with a number of sheds, and we had over 500 recipients. And that gave us quite a lot of data. And if we turn the page, please, we've got over 600 open sheds in the United Kingdom, and 150 additional ones in development. And that's been a steady number in development. So as new sheds open, and we had sheds opening over COVID as well, some virtual sheds, as new sheds open, we see the number of development sheds increasing as well, which is a real positive thing for us all. And we see sheds in places like workshops, like the one from Milton Keynes that we just saw. We see them in community centres. We also have a shed in a bus. And there's also sheds in disused mortuaries. And I emphasise the word disused. Then we click to the next one, please. And if we estimate that there's probably 25 people, and these are conservative estimates in every shed, some sheds have over 100, we then see the impact that they have in a number of areas, whether that's making things for schools or for local charities. There are sheds that have kitted out charity warehouses. They make mud kitchens for schools and sensory areas. They make things for the family, and they also do projects in the community. And whether that's picking up litter or painting fences or fixing things for the local community, they have a massive reach. And those 25 people that go into the shed probably have a positive impact on tens of thousands in their communities when you start adding up the people in schools and the people in the community using different facilities. If we can go to the next slide, please. The average age, over 90% of shedders, when this was taken a couple of years ago, were over the age of 50, with 63% of those over the age of 65. And just to highlight that that's a hard to reach group as far as people in local authorities find in terms of reaching people in the community, particularly men, because a lot of activities are geared up more to women or to couples. And so men really don't have that space to go somewhere other than, say, the pub or to the sports ground to watch some sport. And if we go to the next slide, sheds are open over 200,000 hours every year. That's over 2 million shedder hours. And the study we did showed that over 1 million cups of tea were drank every year. So if anybody's there listening from PG Tips, please come and sponsor Men's Sheds, or from Yorkshire Tea. All brands are accepted, particularly Twinings, Lapsang Souchon. And we also found that that there's over a million toilet stops a year as well with shedders, and probably closer to 2 with all the tea they're drinking. And there are also Welsh tea companies as well, the Welsh Tea Company, I've just been told. If we go to the next slide, the survey showed us that 88% of shedders felt more connected with the community, 34% were happier, and 97% made new friends. We still have 3% that don't want to make new friends, but I think that's an incredible number when you're talking about men, and I include myself in this very much, that we don't really like to make those new connections as much as women perhaps, and there's some science around that and quite a bit of research. So 97% making new friends is incredible. And here's the magic on the next slide. We found that attending a shed, from those that answered saying they were depressed or anxious before they joined a shed or lonely, 89% said that the shed brought a reduction in depression, 75% a reduction in anxiety, and 96% said that they felt less lonely. And that's better than any pill, I think, that you could take on the market. So the power of the shed, the impact of the shed, and shedders around this country are making a marked difference and transformation on people's lives, which is incredible. So why do sheds work, if we move to the next slide? The shed allows people to make something for themselves, for their family or for their community, or even for a charity. The process of making gives the shedder a focus, a tremendous sense of achievement and self-worth. They've created or solved a problem, and it is like the Maslow hierarchy needs. It's about self-esteem and giving yourself that recognition, recognizing that you've achieved something. It's a safe environment. We always promote men's sessions, but women very often join sheds as well and go to those sheds. So men talk shoulder to shoulder. That's one of the sayings that came out of Australia and where the shed movement, as it is today, came from. And I'll use a little analogy of why sheds work for men. So if you put 12 men into a room, or minions, and said, talk about your feelings, what you'd find is 6 would leave the room immediately, 4, and the rest of them would try to find the corners of the room. And of course, not being as bright as we might be as men, there are only 4 corners in this room and the other 2 are really struggling. However, if you put a lawnmower into the room and you say, fix it, within an hour, everybody will know each other's names. They'll be having full conversations. They'll know how they take their tea or their coffee. And they'll also know how many children they've got, how many grandchildren, and what ails them. And you may, if you're very lucky, get a fixed lawnmower. It's not always the case, but you may get a fixed lawnmower. So that's how the shed works. It gives a sense of purpose. It gives that focus. And if we go to the shedder journey on the next slide, we can look at the we can look at some of the challenges, which is, the loneliness in this world, suicide, mental health problems, physical health problems, people just not having something to do, which can bring on anxiety. If we just click forwards, then we see that the shed can bring companionship, friendship, a purpose, self-worth, that feeling of having made something. And that creates a number of impacts on that person's life. It makes them healthier, happier, more productive, more connected with the community, more connected to themselves, to their families. And you might have something that's very useful that you actually need. So we're looking for partnerships with government, with third sector, with education, with private companies. And we're looking at that on a national level, but we're also trying to encourage that on a local level. And then we do our work, which is enabled by our members, first and foremost, and the volunteers from our members. We have shed ambassadors that go out and are there to support people if they want to set up a shed. We have shed leaders, those people that have set up the sheds or are running their sheds. And we also have our sponsors and our donors, of which we are very grateful for. And if we can move to the next slide, please. I just want to touch on what we're doing as UK Men's Sheds Association. And we are something for everybody. We're not everything for everybody. We can't solve all the woes in sheds and make sheds come everywhere. But we do have some ambitious targets. And these are some of the areas that we're working in or that we intend to work in the coming year and going forwards. We're looking to launch a campaign around well-being in craft and DIY, and that's us trying to help reduce the number of people in contemplating suicide and encouraging them to come along to a shed and to get a new lease of life. Or just if you're having a bad day, come and see the shed. So we're going to try and campaign around that to make the world and the country a better place. Michael Jackson said that. We're looking to grow the number of shed volunteers, we're looking to grow the number of sheds, and support sheds as much as we possibly can, and the experience of every shedder. If we can click on to the next slide. So we have a strategy, and if we go to the next slide, you know, sheds are very much the therapy that dare not speak its name, and our vision is for healthy and happy men. And so we want to create, there's lots of information on this slide, but it will be available for people afterwards. But we want to inspire and enable sheds to grow across the UK to improve men's health. And that's a shed in every place that needs one, for every man or woman that needs a shed. If we click to the next one, please. And we will deliver this through a strong organisation in the UK, working with partners across the UK. And if we click to the next one, please. And we base all of what we're doing in insight. So we're insight led. So we listen to what the sheds are asking, we look at what they're saying to us, and that's formed this strategy and how we're going to deliver this strategy. We are a voice of men's sheds, and our targets are 1,000 new sheds in the next 3 years. Sorry, 1,000 sheds open in the next 3 years, growing that to 2,500 sheds in the longer term, which we think is quite achievable. We want to increase our network of volunteers that are outreaching and talking to local authorities to 120. And we want to increase our support to sheds. And we've announced this week Tight Screw, which is the official screw of the UK Men's Sheds Association now. And they join organisations such as Triton Tools, Axminster Tools and Machinery, Smart Water, and a variety of other partners such as Ronseal in supporting the work that sheds do. And we have our support program as well, with our membership officer and administrator as well. So if we can click to the next one and to the one after that, please. So how we will do this, we will champion sheds to help grow them. We will promote. We're going to run these new initiatives, such as the campaigns that we're looking at, and continue to offer support and build our website so that we have more support and more resources for people looking to set up sheds and for those in sheds as well. And if we click to the next one, we're looking to help develop networks, and one of those networks, the network in Norfolk, we'll talk to Johnny about that and the impact that's having. And we're looking to also develop training programs to help shed leaders, help trustees, and to help workshop supervisors as well, and to also help try and recruit more people so that we get more expertise into what we're doing. And if we click to the next one, we provide a first stop shop. If we don't know the answer, and very often we don't, we will hopefully know where to go to. And so we're developing more resources around health and well-being as well with our health and well-being group. And we have a video that we've been playing on that. And so they're developing questions and answers so that if somebody's worried about somebody with dementia in the shed or struggling with asthma or bereavement, we're trying to develop resources and connections so that we can help shedders in that way. And then, as I said earlier, there's the members' benefits as well. Okay, if we click to the next slide, please. And then the voice. We want to engage more. We think together we can engage a lot more people. And the Ronseal video that hopefully you've all seen, it's on our website, it's on our YouTube channel. It has been viewed by, I think, over 1.5 million people on YouTube, on Channel 4, which is the most successful video film of its kind that Ronseal and Channel 4 has ever produced. And that's fantastic for men's sheds because it talks about what we do in a real life context of how it changes people's lives. And together we can do that and get the voice of men's sheds out so that men's sheds can be men's sheds can be a household name in the same way, or better still, than the WI. Not that the WI does anything wrong, but we're better than them because we can be. Next slide, please. So we deliver this through our committees and specialists. We have the ambassadors and partners as well. So we can't achieve it on our own. We're a small team of 5, 6 staff members. And so working with partners such as the Royal Voluntary Service allows us to get that greater reach. And again, we're looking to try and develop those more. And of course, we have the sheds, and they are a wealth of knowledge. And every time we need something, we can go to a shed, and they're always happy to help because they want to spread that magic dust of what the shed is, that golden spirit of the shed. If we could click to the next one, please. And so this is just a list of some of the partners that we work with: the Zero Suicide Alliance, the Men's Health Forum, Royal Voluntary Service, Prostate Cancer UK, some of our funders, the people that we work with to varying levels in the home countries as well. And of course, our sponsors there, we've Screwtight on that list now, and we hope to announce yet another partner with discounts for sheds next week. If we can click to the next slide. I'm nearly finished, I promise. So if you are with a local authority or a church, or if you're with an allotment organisation or with a hospital, and we have sheds in hospitals as well, you can get involved in a number of ways. A very simple way is to signpost people to sheds. You could offer direct support to meet the gaps in society and the gaps that you might be seeing in your provision that you provide. You could be a partner, embedding sheds into your strategic aims as an organisation, and so that we're part of your solutions and your values, and we share your values, so that you can benefit from being involved in sheds, and sheds can certainly benefit from being involved with you. Click to the next slide, please. You could start a new shed. We are there to help you start new sheds. There's a lot of people out there with the experience, and 2 of them will be coming on in a moment, who will be a lot more animated than me. And they can talk to you about how to start a new shed. So can the ambassadors. You could have property. You might have something that you're paying rates on, and actually putting a men's shed in there could reduce those rates. Or if you're a landlord, local authority, you could remove those rates completely for the sheds. And sheds are always looking for somewhere to be. So you are not alone. We're there to support you. And please come and support us as UK Men's Sheds, and as the different organisations such as Men's Sheds Company as well, please. And finally, it's not just property we're looking for. You may have some services that you could lend, some knowledge, some experience. You may have product, or you may be able to help financially, or financially for the shed. And the sheds don't just want things for nothing as well. If people want to go and do wood turning courses, or want to go and learn how to use some of the skills, or have a guest speaker, the sheds are happy to do those things in general. Again, they're autonomous. I can't speak on behalf of all of them, but I do see a spirit in all sheds where they want to get that name out. It's infectious coming to a shed, and they want to spread that. And there's a lot of things that could be a symbiotic relationship with your organisations. So if we could now get the guests back into the studio, and we'll have a discussion, and please send in your questions to us. We could lose the slide now. Hello, Johnny. That looks like a better signal.
Hello. Are we all in the same time zone now?
We are.
I think this is Norfolk Mean Time over here. Yeah.
So I was watching a slide earlier. Is Norfolk in the north, or is it in the south?
We are the east.
You're the east?
The east. Norfolk and Suffolk, absolutely the east, yeah.
So you've sidestepped the argument.
None of this north and southern stuff here. No, it's we are proudly the east of England, yeah.
And Wales, you're Wales.
We'll be west. We'll be west or Wales.
Oh, we might get an east-west fight going on there. Oh. Some rivalry.
Absolutely, yeah. The Battle of Birmingham.
Which is where I'm from.
Oh, you can keep it.
So you're the thorn between two roses, then, Charlie.
Well, I'm living in Nottingham, but that still puts me in the middle. Yes. Hang on a minute, thorn. No, thank you for joining us this morning. if people do have any questions, please send them through, and they'll come up onto the screen. Rob, you're Men's Sheds Cymru, or you're not personally Men's Sheds Cymru, but you work with Men's Sheds Cymru. What are the benefits that you see for partners with sheds?
We actually, what I've seen in my shedding journey, my history with sheds, is partners come to sheds because that's when they want to engage with men, and particularly, as you said in your slides, those men over 65, hard to engage with, or difficult to get them to come forward by themselves to take part in, as a public health service or some kind of well-being message. So I've seen a lot of partners come to a shed and say, "Oh, men's shed, this sounds really interesting. Tell me more. And can we come to you with our message?" I think that's where I've seen, that's where partners can really benefit. If someone, I've seen people put on perhaps a health talk where they want, where they particularly want men to come along, and they'll put it on in perhaps their offices or in a sort of hotel type conference. We all know the type of thing I'm talking about. And then they find that the men actually don't really go. Whereas I think they get much better engagement if they go to the men, and that place is the shed. Like on the slides, like we all know, sheds are safe, fun places, where the guys like going, where they're in control. So, for partners to engage with those groups of older men, go to the shed, go to the men at the shed, and they'll readily listen to that message.
Yeah. And Johnny, you work with a lot of partners. In fact, you're based in a partner. You're
two partners,
two partners. Yes, yeah, very east. What is it they get out of it, and those that you're working with?
I think one of the things, just to add first to what Rob said, one of the benefits I think sheds bring as well, and particularly if you are, say, because I work with two infrastructure organisations, one in Norfolk, one in Suffolk, and one of the things I think an established shed brings about as well is, I would say, it has a hinterland. It's not just the shed, and I often find when people come to talk to sheds, they recognise the benefit of the shed's own place in its community. When I look at some of our sheds, it will often be the case, for instance, that, you were talking in your presentation about sheds in churches, sheds in other things. We've got one or two sheds, say, in museums, and you might well have the case that the chaps are in the shed and possibly their wives are helping run the museums, their families are connected. So I think sheds are often a really good first port of call for someone who wants a partnership, because as well as the shed being a dynamic place where, a lot of all sorts of different things can happen, sheds tend to be increasingly well connected. I know, sheds across Norfolk and Suffolk that maybe are well connected into, say, their local good neighbour schemes. So in a sense, when we're talking to partners, we have the shed, but we always remember, the shed ultimately is its people and the people it's connected to as well. So, it's not just thinking about some sort of inanimate thing that partners want to link with. It's all the relationships that exist within that shed, all the relationships that already exist from the shed out into the community. And sheds have proved really, really effective ways of sometimes breaking down barriers into communities. And that's attractive to partner organisations.
Yeah, we had, it was a housing association, a little like Havant Cymru, where the Welsh programme's been delivered through, and they were talking to us about trying to reduce evictions in their housing association, and they couldn't get through to the men, and so they felt that setting a men's shed up for their community would work. So they're working on that project at the moment and trying to connect locally. So it's trying to solve some of the problems in society through a positive way, rather than evicting somebody, for instance.
The other thing I might add is, I say, people have recognised that sheds have made some real progress in areas where others can't. It's a familiar story how difficult it is to get a man to go to a doctor, and that's well known. And we know that sheds have been really important in sometimes gently easing men that way, particularly if there is a problem. But interesting one that we're having a discussion with in Norfolk at the moment is about an organisation that provides free legal advice. Now, probably trying to get a man to go to a lawyer is nearly as difficult as getting a man to go to a doctor. But for example, over lockdown, all sorts of very difficult things have happened to people who may well find their way into sheds. And very often men are not great at asking in the first place where they're going to find stuff, and if you can actually present that into the shed and suddenly say, well, okay, well, here's some help for you, then, that's good for the partner organization. But of course, it's terribly good for our members as well, because they might not be aware of some of the services that are available to them until someone comes into the shed and says, and you could look at this. And, that's what we're hoping to try and certainly get around Norfolk and in different ways in Suffolk as well, so that we are a bridge between some of the potential partners and the services they offer, and of course the communities, our members in their communities.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Rob, we've got some questions that we'll get up as well, and that's an important one. Yes, about research, and Ken was commenting about he knows why sheds work, but it's good to see some of the stats behind it. From our perspective, we think we have to evidence that. We have to show that, because if somebody's going to invest, they want some return for that investment. But particularly in the UK, what we try not to do, or our viewpoint, is not to put the onus on sheds then to be reporting on their successes, because it just becomes a form-filling exercise, and that's not what people go to the sheds for. But we're trying to do some light touch research around the country so that we can evidence that. So somebody will give funding because we deliver that, not because I give you X to deliver Y and Z. It's actually, we know you'll deliver Y and Z. Here's some of the funding, which is a difficult environment to be in, I think. And Rob, you get quite a bit of lottery funding. How do you manage that target piece with the lottery?
Yes, well, yes. Unfortunately, lottery funding ended at the end of last year, but they were really good partners. Our liaison officer clearly sees those benefits. You just need to take someone to a shed, and for them to experience a shed to see what their funding is delivering. It's quite obvious, and I'm often asked, come and do a presentation about sheds, Rob. Come and talk to us about sheds. I said, actually, it'd be better if you came to a shed and just experience it, because you really get it when you're there. And the men are often very good at articulating why they go to the shed and what they get out of it.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, and one of the things we talk about is men don't talk about their challenges or their problems, but actually, you go into a shed, you can't shut a lot of them up. It's the environment. Typical running costs of a shed from Josh. It varies very much. I mean, it's if you take the rent out of it, a lot of sheds will run on £3,000 ish. But then we see in some of the reports we see, but then we see that the rent can be as much as some sheds are paying £10,000 a year. Others are paying £1 a year if they're based in a railway. I mean, what's it like in Norfolk? What are the sort of ranges there, and in Suffolk as well?
Well, it depends really what's, I mean, again, like you say, every shed as such is a bit different, and often will have different, there's quite a few sheds run on peppercorn rents. Obviously, the downside of that tends to be security of tenure, which I think is a big problem for sheds nationwide. I mean, I would quote my colleague and our mutual friend Henry Gowman. I mean, his shed, I know he said I think he can run it on a little more than £1,000 a year, but that depends. I think that's on grants. What they do is sheds obviously can bring in some income depending on what they are, what they're making, what their relationships are. There is always that potential side of shed. So in the sense where a shed is bringing money. Most of our sheds are getting by on, there's quite a few local grants, and quite a few have benefited from startup grants. You don't need a massive amount of money to get a shed up and running. And actually, probably the costs are a bit front loaded. So once you can set up, and once you can maybe start making things that bring some income in, and maybe taking on some work in your local area, that all helps bring a bit of income in. So, you know, again, like always, it depends on the rent, it depends on the arrangements, it depends also on, I mean, we found just lately with insurance costs vary. We've got some sheds that are built in nice modern brick buildings, and of course their insurance is really low. Some that are in wooden buildings, fine, you know, and particularly if you've got wooden buildings with machinery inside them, the insurers are going to go. Arr! So it's very difficult to generalize, but I think there are a good wide range of sources of income, particularly starting up sheds that then can get you on the road reasonably, you know, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's reasonably effective and reliable. Yeah.
Yeah, we ran there was a couple of sessions yesterday about sustainable income and grants, which was hopefully really useful. And there's a question there from Andrew Caldecott regarding the sponsors lists. Yes, the benefits are available through the UK Men's Sheds website through the members zone, but we do also have in the newsletter we regularly send out the grant making bodies and when they're making the grants and those that are available. So we try to do that. But where else? I mean, where else do sheds go, Rob? I mean, if you look on the Charities Commission, some sheds bring in 14,000 a year as their turnover, and maybe there's a benefit there of being a charity. Again, another session we ran. Where do you see most of the income coming from for your for the sheds in Wales?
I think it's just difficult to say where you know where the majority is. It's a complete mix. You know, whether it's small local grants, some of the bigger sheds, perhaps with guys who you know, perhaps have a history of dealing with paperwork. We know how much paperwork requests involves doing that. And again, it depends on their running costs. You know, if you can get that sort of free property or free premises, you really don't need that much money to run the shed. And perhaps those sheds are getting by with either charging a small membership fee to their members or just selling what they make locally. Yeah. And then, of course, you know, if you've got a much bigger rent, then you do need, you know, I think it's difficult, you know, if you're paying £500 a month rent and you're a sort of fairly small shed, difficult to generate enough income through sales and membership. So it's a mix, I would say, actually. Yeah, it's a mix of sales, membership, and then small grant applications.
Yeah. And you know, you're saying that about sales just reminded me about partnerships and why they're so essential. We found there's a shed not far from me based in a church, and they sell a lot of, or they provide for their diocese a lot of holding crosses for a festival that they have every year. One of the other things that they do is they have a relationship with the local co-op, and that's continued from, first of all, it was a grant that was made, but every year they now still sell their 800 robins at the co-op, which is £800 for them. So, which is a nice Christmas gift for the shed. So whilst they were recipients of a grant for 1 year, and a lot of the time you find that grant's over, so therefore that partnership then ends, they've continued that relationship in a non-evasive way for the co-op, and yet it's really positive for them as a shed. We have a here we go, Inverclyde shed just acquired a building with a 25-year lease for £1. That's excellent from the Scottish government there, and what we do see is the Scottish government very much involved with men's sheds and supporting them, which is a fantastic thing. Now, I did see a question that came up around insurance. Here it is, typical insurance premiums. Again, I think this varies greatly. We've looked as UKMSA for a single provider of insurance policies. I think the challenge is that it varies so much, and it depends on your shed, that there isn't a best fit for all. Some churches I know get free insurance. Some churches, some sheds get free insurance because they're linked to the church and they get the ecclesiastical insurance, and they see that as no more risk for one shed in particular. But I've also seen insurances for over £1,000 when they've been linked to local authority buildings. Is that the same in you've seen in Norfolk there and Suffolk?
I think one thing I would say that, I mean, we again, even just a microcosm across, I mean, I say particularly Norfolk here because I've only relatively recently started working in the Suffolk sheds, but it will probably be the same. one of the key things I think with insurance is particularly your choice of insurer, getting somebody who at least understands the shed concept, because I know that some sheds have sort of got out to the open market and not everybody gets us. I mean, there are some organizations who have quite a good track record with sheds, and I mean, certainly across the Norfolk network, I think we sort of share the information around as to who's been who's been really helpful or who's a good idea to talk to. Like we said earlier, a shed, because a shed could be made of any number of things, a brick shed, a modern brick. I mean, the guys over in North Walsham recently moved into new accommodation with a nice modern brick build, or I should say, which is an insurer's, paradise. So they've probably got quite a good price, but wooden sheds would get different. But I think the most important thing is when you're choosing your insurer, have a conversation with the insurer, make sure that it's an ongoing conversation. It's not just a once for all chat, keep them informed of developments in the shed. And as I say, I think, UKMSA recommends your local shed. If you have a shed network, there will be knowledge there about it. So if you're in the position of a shed looking for insurance, do ask around other sheds, because there's quite a lot of experience within the community as to who understands us, who gets it, maybe also who hasn't done, and so check around. Most problems like that have usually been encountered by one of the other sheds, so hopefully we can share that information.
Yeah, and one of the things I've heard is just be aware if your quote is too low, because it might not be covering anything at all that you think you're getting. So question there about, has anybody looked at funding from trusts and charitable foundations? Yes. And this year we can't name them, but we did receive a grant from one charitable trust for just shy of £250,000, and that's funding our development staff. So Rachel, the volunteer and community development manager, and David Melly, who started yesterday with us, who's our partnership development manager. So yes, we do. We also get funding from the Mercers, which Johnny will know through the work in Norfolk. The Mercers, the Worshipful Company of Mercers, the Rain Foundation, the Tudor Trust, Goldsmiths. I should now name them all, because Garfield and Weston, the Dulverton Trust as well, and all those other trusts that would like to give us some money as we're going to apply to them. So, so we do. Funding from charitable trusts does come with requirements. They're usually not free grants, so we do have to provide reporting on those. And it's, at the moment, we're not set up to give out grants to other organisations. We did have the ASDA Foundation. We worked with ASDA on doing some of that. But yes, we do, and we don't have a good spread of income coming to UK men's sheds. Most of it comes from charitable foundations, and we need to try and diversify that funding model so that we're less at risk. But we're very, very keen to still continue to receive that funding, because they are very generous. And in Wales, you've been mainly the lottery, but also foundations as well.
Yes, and Moon Dance and Waterloo Foundation and Small Man from Welsh Government. But similar to UK, heavily weighted towards, grants.
Tony's just made a really important point, and then followed up. Yes, COVID-19 has decimated many communities and people's lives, and employment, as there's been record employment in recent years because of it. And men's sheds really has a place to play in that, in terms of the recovery of the UK. Are you seeing an increase in demand? Because we certainly did online. Are you seeing that in Suffolk and Norfolk?
Yeah, I mean, what we begin to get now, and this is a debate I know that's going on, I think possibly is the focus of one of the later sessions later today. We're getting a lot of interest. We're certainly getting interest from people who'd like to join sheds directly, and people who go on forums and things like that. I mean, we've got one of our colleagues on the steering group sits on one of the local mental health forums, and he's constantly receiving questions about joining sheds and where they are and things like that. What we're also getting a very notable increase as well is, I'd say, approaches from what you call third-party referrers to, whether that be social prescribers, statutory, other voluntary organisations interested in sheds. And I mean, that is, I think that's a good thing, but obviously there's a need for it to be, to be managed thoughtfully, as it were. I won't steal the thunder of, I think, the session that's coming, but it's, yeah, I mean, there is definitely an upswing. And the other thing I think as well that we're going to see is that the age level is coming down. I mean, I recently had a discussion with children's services, and it's not very often you have a discussion with children's services about men's sheds. They're perceived at other ends of the spectrum. But of course, there are now, for instance, there are single dads out there who have fairly empty days whilst the children are out at school and things like that. I have noticed that the average age of shedders is coming down a bit. And I mean, that's good. I think that's really to be encouraged. And I think we need to make sure as a movement, we're ready for, it's easy to be typecast as something for old men, which is not true anyway. But, I think what we're going to see is a younger cohort coming into sheds. And maybe the challenge for all of us is how do we welcome them, integrate them, make them feel that the shed is as much for them as it is for maybe some of our longer standing older members.
Yeah, and I think it's when the shed's available as well. So a lot of sheds are only open in the day when people would work, but then we're seeing other sheds that run sessions now in evenings. And Patrick's shed in Froome, Patrick's up next with the social prescribing and referral session. They have a young people section as well, I believe. So, and I've seen it in Blue Shed in near Didcot, who was the 500th shed to open in the UK. They had young people in there, which was just fantastic to see. In fact, he was definitely under the age of 18, if not under the age of 15, but he was there with his dad. That was lovely to see. So we're going to wrap up now, I think, unless there's any other questions from anybody. We have 2 minutes to go. The next session will be introduced by Rachel. I'm not going to steal her thunder. But thank you very much, Johnny. Thank you, Robert.
Pleasure. Good to be here.
Thank you both.
And all the presentations from the week will be going online. We will be putting them on our YouTube channel, and we will also be putting links off our social media and our website for all of these as well. So Simi there is talking about marketing for younger people. Simi Bennett. Yes, and we agree. And so we try to change our collateral and our imagery on a regular basis to reflect sheds with younger people, with older people. We need to do that with people from different ethnic backgrounds, because if we're going to attract those groups into sheds and show them how welcoming sheds are, we need to actually put our money where our mouth is and our materials where our mouth is to do that. Any final words before we get kicked off, Rob?
Keep shedding.
Cool. And Johnny, anything from you? Or you?
Yeah, I'd just say this is for all the difficulties we've gone through, this is a golden opportunity for sheds coming up. Even things are not as difficult as you think. Even things with funding, there is stuff out there. So go for it, because I think there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of help out there. It's a really good time to get into shedding.
Cool. Thank you, Johnny. And I look forward to coming over and seeing some sheds in your network as we start to open up. And over to you, Rachel and Patrick and Chris, I think.
Oh, morning. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final day of ShedFest. So I'll be hosting this next session with Patrick and Chris, who I'll ask to come and join me in a second. And this session is all about social prescribing in a shed context. So thinking about opportunities, challenges, how it might look like to sheds, how it might look like to external agencies. And I'm going to be joined by Chris and Patrick, who I'll ask to come along now so I can introduce them. Here we go. Here's Chris. Here's Patrick.
Hi.
So,
Hello.
Hi. So we've got Dr. Chris Manning, who is a retired GP, so he's well used to navigating the health and social care system. Also a shedder, Sheddington, and we've got Patrick, who's one of our volunteer ambassadors, and he's based in Froome in Somerset. So basically what our session is going to look like is we're going to show a little video in a minute, which I will try and do as smoothly as I possibly can. We're going to welcome questions or comments from anybody who's watching. We'll give priority to these questions if you've got any. But otherwise, I guess we're going to be having a bit of a chat about social prescribing and sheds. I've got a big list of questions to put to you guys as the shedding experts, and hopefully this will cover all the information that people watching might want to know. So that's what we're going to hope for. I'm going to put a warning out there now. My connection's been a little bit patchy, so if I freeze, we've got Laura on hand ready to jump in and take the questions from me. So don't be alarmed if Laura suddenly appears, but cross our fingers that we'll get on okay. So yeah, welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, and
I'm assuming that Dr. Chris Manning is the shed expert now.
Well, it's not me.
I think I'm an expert, actually.
Well, I guess I'll kick off with this video, and that'll give us some. Here we go. I'm just putting it on now, so bear with. Bear with me one moment. Okay, here we go.
I had different people coming to see me, what I needed, and it gave me confidence that there is some good in this world.
If you become disconnected and feel lonely and isolated, it's very difficult to look after yourself as well.
When you get older, your whole life changes. Your children have grown up and gone, and I can't expect any person to keep coming here when they've got their own lives to be leading. I don't think anybody can explain what the loneliness is like. I was in a terrible state. I knew that if I didn't get somebody here to see me, that I would die.
So it's treating them with kindness and compassion and listening to their story and understanding where they are in their life and what needs to happen next to make that better. Right, how are you?
Very well.
Yeah.
You were saying that you felt quite isolated.
Yes, I did. But coming to the club, we got to know each other, and it was nice seeing each other.
So we always give them, I always carry some brochures with me and I can give them the brochures. And when they get a hold of the health centre, the Health Connected Action.
We can just help people to get in touch with the support that's out there. There is so much support, and just to help people not feel sort of isolated, really.
We've got that 500 people who on average will talk to 20 people a year. That's 10,000 people put in touch with those resources.
They phoned up one day and they said they got this male that would come to see me, and that was the best thing ever happened. Well, I can't tell people what a difference he's made coming.
for every £1 that's spent on this scheme, the NHS is saving £6. And the joy of this huge impact it can have on individuals, turning their lives around, being given back a sense of being part of a community again.
Oh, am I muted? I'm back.
No,
Okay,
you're back on. You're back on.
I'm back.
Rachel.
Okay, so that was a video. Thanks for bearing with. And Patrick, I'm going to come to you first because obviously that video was set in Frome, where you're from. Can you tell us a little bit about how social prescribing or social signposting has worked in your community in Frome?
Okay, well, you've seen the video, and I get that's how it works. If you, for those people who got a more traditional view on social prescribing, the health connectors were described in the video are typically link workers, but the difference is that we have, I think Dr. Kingston said we have 500 community connectors. We actually have 1,200 community connectors right now, and they're people trained by those link workers so that they know about all the organisations in town. And the other thing that works particularly well is that the link workers work very closely with community groups. So when the shed is open, you know, the link workers, we get visits from the link workers probably, you know, once or twice a month with people that they're referring to the shed. And even during COVID, we probably meet with them the same number of times because they have outside meeting places like the Talking Bench outside the library every Wednesday. So with these 1,200 community connectors, a lot of people in the community can already point people towards community groups. And one of the things that maybe I can point out, and I do quote some numbers and savings throughout this session, and they always come from .gov or .org websites or .com websites, not social media. This is from the .gov.uk website. There is growing body of evidence that social prescribing reduces pressure on the NHS by directing people to more appropriate services and groups. An evidence summary published by the University of Westminster suggests that where an individual has support through social prescribing, their GP consultations reduced by an average of 28% and A&E attendances by 24%, which is very similar to the experiences that the substantial reduction that we saw in emergency hospital admissions in Frome. Now, every GP in the Frome Medical Centre and link worker has, a health connector has access, as does all of the community connectors, to literally hundreds of community groups very easily from their desks or from the brochures that you saw the community driver handing out. However, I have a slight problem with the word social prescribing, and I prefer to use signposting or referrals. A prescription is an instruction written by a medical practitioner that authorises a patient to be issued with medicine or treatment, and often it's free. And I have to say that one of the attitudes I have, and this is a personal view, not a UK Men Shed Association view, but this quote from Matt Hancock, which is no longer Health Secretary, I recognise, and I hope I'm quoting him accurately. He says, and I want to say this very frankly, social prescribing reduces the oversubscription of drugs. It can lead to the same or better outcome for patients without so many pills, and it saves money for the NHS because many of these social cures are either free or cheaper. Well, if you saw the previous session, or many of the sessions this week, you know that sheds aren't free, you know. And I'd just like to say that my view is that actually an average shed prevents somebody killing themselves at least once every 5 years. So possibly 100 people per year right now are being saved from killing themselves. And the cost of a suicide in the UK is £1.7 million. So even if you half that number, you know, you get huge, huge savings. But the money is not following the prescriptions. And I thought we'd come onto that a little later. But, you know, and I personally have had 3 shedders in Frome over the last 7 years tell me that their shed has saved their life. You know, so this is not an isolated case. So my view is we should actually rub out the prescribe word. And by the way, prescriptions don't actually work in the NHS either. You know, prescriptions for medicine for people with long-term conditions is estimated that only 50% of people take those medicines optimally. And if you take our typical ethnic demographic group of over 55, some studies report that people taking low dosage statins will cease after 77% of people prescribed low dosage statins will discontinue taking them after 2 years. So my viewpoint is we shouldn't be talking about prescribing, although every national program is all about prescribing. We should be talking about referrals and signposting. And the key issue is about following the money. Money to follow where the service is being delivered. So I would like to close this little section before we answer some of the other questions. This is from the BMC Public Health Journal this year. And it says, while recognising the health benefits that shed deliver, policymakers and health and social care practitioners must consider that sheds are not formal service providers, nor do they house individuals with professional experience of dealing with physical and mental health issues. Therefore, policymakers and practitioners must find novel ways to coexist and work in partnership with such organisations to ensure a wide reach when planning male health interventions for those with and without existing health conditions. And I agree.
Yeah. So it's more of a, would you say you think social prescribing is more of a preventative measure than a curative measure?
It's both, but it needs to be handled in a different way than instructing people to do something.
Yeah, definitely. And what about kind of examples where, you know, to both of you, examples where you've seen somebody socially prescribed to a shed that's gone well or maybe not so well? I don't know if you've got examples of either of these.
Well, if I could just add to what Patrick said, I completely agree with every word. And the only thing I would point out is that if you're going to change systems that are imposed on people, for example, prescribing or diagnosis or whatever, it's a sort of much more of a top-down thing. And in the context of a relationship which goes on over time, which is what general practice has always done, you know, that really works in terms of, you know, we've got to get the idea into medical mindsets, and the word prescribing should only be seen, I think, as a way of driving a wooden horse into a doctor's brain, just so that he starts playing with it and starts to realize that this is a great way of actually restoring people's health and keeping them out of the surgery, which I guess is just about every doctor's dream at the moment, especially as so many doctors are actually burning out and fizzling out. And if I might say, you know, I was suicidal back in 1986 for 6 months, and you know, doctors themselves are in a pickle. So we've actually got 2 or 3 doctors already coming along to our shed, and certainly suicide and mental health issues have been extremely present and increasingly present over the last, you know, 6 to 12 months especially. And I mean, we only opened about a year and a half ago, and it's been a real kind of, you know, accelerator. We've had up to 26 people arrive, and then COVID comes along, and just about all of us have experienced mental health difficulties and stresses. It certainly has affected, I don't think there's a single one of our members, shedders, who've actually, you know, not experienced, you know, what it feels like. So I mean, it's a big subject, but it is the start of a complete sea change. It has to be the start of a sea change in terms of looking at, you know, the things that work for people that aren't medical and clinical and any NHS business at all. But then we have got people who have got diagnoses and who are ill, who will come to sheds quite rightly. And, you know, both sides need to be skilled up. The health service needs to be wised up about, you know, as Patrick's just done. I mean, that what you said, if that could go as a missive to every single MP, that would be super, and reiterated as well, because we're working not at the top down, but much more at the bubble up, at the bottom up, in terms of changing the way we work. So I mean, COVID and all the rest of it, they excites and works through exactly the same pathways as chronic stress, as the pathways that loneliness and self-isolation work through in terms of our fight and flight mechanisms. The biology is exactly the same. And that's what COVID's telling us. It's revealing to us the huge disparities across the country, and men's sheds are going to be a critical part of, you know, being in people's lives to help them recover their sense of community and being with others and shoulder to shoulder. You know, that's the ethos of the sheds, and it's a great ethos, and it should not be allowed to be diluted or misunderstood.
Thanks, Chris.
Rachel, I could give you a couple of examples. I mean, I couldn't even guess how many shedders have had aortic aneurysm tests, flu jabs, pneumonia vaccinations, blood tests, lost weight, ate more healthily, drunk less as a direct result of attending the shed. But we have some that have been referred or signposted directly from the medical centre, which have worked very well. One guy who was directed here, well, he actually was directed to a bereavement group in Frome, and he turned up at the bereavement group, and it was a circle of people sat in chairs, and he said, I don't want to do this, I want to do work, I want to do workshop stuff. So well, you need to go to the men's shed. So there's a good example where that, if you like, the prescription was to go to a bereavement group, and he spent 5 minutes there and then came down the shed. You know, since then he's lost weight, he's got a bucket list, including driving steam trains, doing wing walking, he wants to do the zip wire in North Wales when COVID, you know, and he's just turned his life around. There are others, by the way, who've not worked quite so well. So we've had some mental health referrals where it works very well with mental health referrals where the mental health worker comes with the person who's attending. That works really well. But sometimes the mental health worker says, oh, well, they're fine, we'll leave them. And we actually have to say, no, please don't leave them. And we've had a couple of occasions where they said, no, we're going to leave them. And it was difficult, you know, it was difficult. So, you know, there's some recommendations I'd make is that any referral by a link worker or a prescription, the very first meeting with that new community group should be with that link worker. The link worker should accompany the person who's been referred to that group and spend the time there, so that they make sure that they're bedded in properly. So the bad experiences is when they're just, you know, referred off. The other thing is people sometimes believe, we've had things referred from other organizations like job centers, and they think because they're over 65, it's not going to cost them anything. You know, so, you know, this stuff needs to be looked at. The money needs to follow it. And as Chris said, I mean, currently, the social prescribing guidelines, I mean, this is a quote from the government recommendations to link workers. All community groups and other organisations supported to receive referrals safely, link workers should check that they're insured, have first aid training, including mental health, basic health and safety, loan working, data protection, food handling certificates, and DBS checking. Well, you know, one of the suggestions I have is this, is actually if the social prescription service was to pay for the insurance for the shed, all right, the insurer makes sure that the shed has got sufficient health and safety policies, etc., etc., etc. But in addition to that, my suggestion would be that the social prescribing service not only pays for the public liability insurance for the organisation they're referring to, they also provide free mental health training and first aid training. You know, I mean, we do first aid training for lots of our shedders, and it costs us an absolute fortune. It costs us 120, 150 pound a time, you know, and we're, you know, this is crazy. The last time we ran a first aid training course, it cost us over 1,400 pounds because our shed doesn't comply with the requirements for the first aid trainers because it hasn't got, you know, carpet, and it hasn't got this and hasn't got that. So, you know, so these things are very expensive, and that would be my recommendation. The other thing I would say, and I know I talked to some sheds in Chester just recently, and what they say is they request any link worker becomes a member of the organisation that they're referring to, so that they can take part in developing the health and safety policy or the you know, the safeguarding policies or anything else like that. You know, I mean, you know, the food handling certificates, you know, lots of sheds do food, but many don't, you know, and DBS checking, you know, how much does DBS checking cost these days? It's huge amounts. So, you know, the services, the benefits from sheds are very clear, okay? But, you know, it's not free or cheaper. It costs, and the money has to follow that.
Yeah. And obviously you touched there about, you know, difficult conversations if people are kind of turning up at shed and then, you know, as you said, potentially being left there or wanting to leave or whatever it is. You know, these kind of suggestions, I guess that supports, you know, it takes some of that responsibility away from the sheds. If they, you know, is that one of the big concerns for sheds, that they will have responsibility for somebody that's gone along, been told to go along? What's the difference between somebody just turning up at a shed and somebody who's been told to go to a shed or prescribed? And are there any other considerations that sheds would have to kind of take into account, you know, when thinking about accepting referrals?
I mean, it's quite tricky because people just rock up, and you know, my children. The reason why I get a bit tired and I'm just about to take a 10-day break is because actually, if you're really looking after people and making sure that they feel safe and sound and supported in a particular space, it's quite hard work. And if I wasn't professionally trained, I don't know quite what I'd do with that. I mean, yes, you know, you could lead somebody over to, you know, a powerful drilling machine. That might not be appropriate. I mean, I think the first thing, the really important thing is actually, you know, the first initial visits that anybody makes with drop-ins and people like that they feel welcome. And I mean, we've seen people, and not to be in a rush. You know, the systems that we operate are all about getting people in and out.
Absolutely.
They're process driven. They're procedurally driven. Sheds are relationally driven. And actually, an awful lot of our healthcare and social care fabrics are breaking down because they're all getting so procedural. You know, GPs and others don't have long-term therapeutic relationships with people anymore. You see a different person every time you go, and you tell them again, yet again, for the 14th time that you were frightened by a robin when you were 3 and it's affected you. I mean, it's just pointless. It's a complete waste of everybody's time. And more importantly, it's a waste of people's lives. And I think what actually ought to happen is that Patrick, who's got all this so beautifully amassed, I mean, it's fantastic. And we should go to see, for example, the people who head up social prescribing and fire them at the men's sheds approach as a major resource to people, but that it must adhere to all the principles that Patrick is outlining, because it's no reason at all why doctors or anybody else should have to work in conditions that are dangerous, and there's absolutely no reason why voluntary people and volunteers should have to work in situations that are dangerous or that make them feel uncomfortable, or worse still, make the system unsafe.
And do you think, you know, talking about kind of these pressures on the sheds, do you think that maybe there's an expectation that they may have to do reporting on these, you know, referrals, or they may have to keep track of numbers and feedback? Is that a concern for sheds?
We've already had that, and we also have to fill in these ludicrous. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this too publicly, but I mean, for God's sake, I mean, people want to actually make a difference in their community. Why is there so much process in the way of it?
Yeah.
Because process just enables people who are sitting in their desks that they've always sat in to stay the same way they've always stayed. We're talking here about a social movement. Sheds are a social movement. They are a bubble up. I don't use the word bottom up. I've seen enough bottoms in my life so I use the word bubble up because there's energy and direction in that. And I recommend we use the term bubble up because it's about forcing out a lot of older habits, older ways of doing things, as the story about the GP in Frome demonstrates. And we could carry on with a conversation about the importance of that in terms of the way it's going to change local politics. Because these are all blocks to all the things we're talking about. You know, that's why so many people are getting sick, because they're being frustrated in their lives and they can't deliver what they know they can deliver. This is what we hear from the sheds people. We get narratives every day. You know, we had somebody nearly killed, you know, drove themselves off a roundabout last week. And I mean, you know, they pop up, they've got a mental health problem. I mean, that's the, you know, we need to see these things for what they are.
Yeah. And there's a comment, I've just seen a comment pop up from, I don't know if you can put it up, from Ray Hart. Here we go, just saying that he agrees with Patrick about that there's a lot of responsibility handed over to shed management by referrals without the necessary discussions and understanding of the shed resources. And I suppose that's it. At the end of the day, you're all there, you know, you've started this community group yourselves. You know, as Patrick said, you know, you're not there as carers or to take responsibility for somebody else. It can be a lot of pressure, can't it? And I did want to ask a question as well about just what you thought the difference would be. You know, we've touched on that general community referrals may be more of a preventative kind of measure for people to attend groups to avoid, you know, serious health conditions down the line or more severe mental health problems. But what do you think might be the difference between these general community referrals and referrals coming from places such as probation service, for example, or for people with more complex needs that are looking to be signposted towards sheds?
Well, sorry, Rachel, I'll get back to that, but the review process you're talking about is that link workers are requested to use the common outcomes framework to assess the impact of social prescribing on the person, the NHS, and community groups receiving referrals, which is a huge document. And by the way, they don't use the common outcomes framework to review the impact on me of me taking my statins, forgetting to take my statins, or not taking my statins, etc. You know, so it just seems to be off balance. But in terms of referral from other organisations, such as you know, probation services, there are sheds that actually specifically work with other groups like the probation service and the prison service. My belief is that just like the Freem shed was actually set up with a lot of help from the local medical centre and support, my view is that if you know, there has been talk about putting a men's shed in a prison before, but you know, all the risk analysis people get very nervous. We were visited by the Duchess of Cornwall 18 months ago or so, and the security people say, Patrick, will anybody in the shed be carrying anything sharp? It's a workshop. They're all carrying chisels, you know. But the point being is these kind of problems need to be, you know, no one needs to tell us how to do it. They need to come along and help and help build these things, you know, and try these things out. You know, the other thing about review, you know, are CCG analysts able to work with local partners through data sharing agreements to track the person's use of the NHS using their NHS number brackets with appropriate consent? Well, the local job centre refers people to our shed, and they ring me up from time to time and said, does Charlie attend? I said, I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you. Why would I? If Charlie wants to attend, Charlie can attend. You know, I'm not going to tell them whether Charlie attends or not. And they say, well, you have to. I said, well, actually, I don't. And I don't tell them. You know, and I've also had, by the way, I've had shedders say to me, not recently, I have to say, but back in 2015, I had a shedder say, Patrick, what have you put in the report to the NHS about my attendance at the shed? You know, so people worry about that kind of stuff. And it doesn't happen. But people want it to happen. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it has to be different. But this question,
I was going to say, do you think that potentially? Oh, sorry, I think I lost you there. Do you think that could potentially create kind of, you know, difficulties in the shed if you're seen as keeping an eye on people? You know, it's different, isn't it? It changes that dynamic.
Untenable.
Yeah,
would not work.
And what do you think? You know, talking about these other organisations, what, you know, there's obviously a lot of considerations that you know, different agencies need to think about and the sheds need to think about. But what do you think kind of the opportunities are for sheds to work more closely with, you know, either services or other voluntary organisations? Oh, sorry, did I go?
Any link worker or GP that wants to refer to a community organisation should visit that community organisation personally, would be my view. And the first referral they make, anytime anybody is referred, they should accompany that person. The link worker should accompany the person for the entire period that they're at the community group. I mean, it's not just sheds; it's allotment groups, it's gardening, it's art groups, it's all kinds of stuff.
Yes, it's a different thing altogether when people spontaneously do something, or whether their quote's referred, because you end up potentially moving into the service provision department. Pardon me, of human activities, and that is fraught with difficulties. I'm absolutely with Patrick. I completely agree. You've got to be very rigorous about, you know, not giving into pressure or giving into a budgetary need or whatever. The principles that Patrick is outlining have to stand in all cases, in my view. If we're going to be safe, sound, and supportive, then that is absolutely vital.
Yeah. And just in the chat, Laura's kind of put a message just saying that we've recently heard from 2 sheds who are in the process of being set up by prisons. And I know, Chris, we talked earlier about a shed that was in was it a hospice or a hospital?
There's quite a few in hospices.
Yeah, and hospitals as well. And, you know, what do you think the benefits of something like that are, where they're serving a specific community?
Well, I've been to visit at least one of them. Pardon me. And I found it quite interesting because it's quite regimented. It's obviously ticking all the boxes because the charity's name is behind it, and they've got all their safeguarding things to undertake. So it's that, again, we're back to a discussion about, you know, a spontaneous piece of social movement that's really changing a lot of things and is helping a lot of people into a much more formal service provision environment. And I think that, again, it obeys the same rules because the particular charity I'm thinking of is very rigorous, but it's been extremely successful at getting men to engage in bereavement when they've been bereaved through their partner having cancer. And there are also some ladies as well. But there wasn't so much of a problem attracting the ladies to what the hospice had to offer, but they set up the shed specifically for blokes, and that has been very successful. But it is very specific.
So I guess, go on.
Rachel, can I just, just go back to funding. The government guidelines on social prescribing says it's essential to ensure that local voluntary organisations, community groups and socially enterprises are locally sustainable and can plan ahead. If social prescribing is to be embedded across all local areas, support should include funding is one of them. And it says, develop a shared investment fund, bringing together all local partners to provide funding to charities. Commission existing organisations to provide services, provide small grants, micro-commission new groups. The only examples I can find are, the National Academy of Social Prescribers has got a thriving community fund of £1.8 million, which has funded 36 projects. Well, now, there's a few others. Rotherhithe is very good, and a few others, Bromley. But, the trouble is with the funding, what they're doing is they're funding to set up a group. Well, it'll set up, and then, by the way, when the money runs out, it'll die. They have to be self-sustainable.
I was going to ask about that.
1.8 million. This is pathetic compared with the savings. You heard Dr. Kingston. That's going to save 12 million immediately.
What do you think that should look like then, Patrick? If another community group or agency wanted to kind of start their own shed, what should that look like?
Oh, they should make sure that it's long-term sustainable. That's what and the support honestly is, the Free Medical Centre, when the shed was set up, they provided me with, distribution lists with marketing and adverts and putting posters up. They gave me the main meeting place in Frome, which can hold 500 people. They gave me 3 afternoons free in there, and they're talking about it. It's fantastic. So you need to work together, and as Chris says, it needs to bubble up, not slop down through some kind of huge folder that no one reads. I'm sorry to bang on about it. It's a really valuable process that needs to be done right, not wrong.
Well, that was my next kind of question was, talking about bottom up or bubble up or whatever you want to call it, is, it's not an agency kind of launching in and creating a shed because they think that's what somebody wants. It's created with the members who are going to be there. And as you talk about self-sustaining and running it, it's, if that agency backs away, it's not going to kind of wither and die, I think is really important.
And talk a little bit, if I may, just about the academy, because that was basically set up and came out of the College of Medicine, which was set up by a good friend of mine, actually, whose name I've forgotten. There you go, Only Human. Those of you who are very observant will see that I've got my very own satellite above my head. But it's switched itself off, so I can't give the answer now. But it's set up by Dr. Michael Dixon and Sir Sam Everington, who's a GP in Bromley by Bow. And these two people have been carving away at this issue as holistic doctors for the best part of 25 to 30 years. So what they've set up is exactly what it should be seen to be, which is something that has been set up, but it's not going to run unless it's plugged in and unless it's dovetailed and unless the conversations are happening I've already actually contacted the president, who used to be past chair of the Royal College of General Practitioners, Professor Helen Stokes Lampard, and I think we need to go and have Patrick and I need to go and have a meeting with them to have these discussions, because it's come out of the right spirit. We must make sure that we don't kill it, but on the other hand, it's got to be safe, and for the people who are operating it, because doctors who design things, they don't have the experience necessarily, although Sam and Michael certainly do. But I mean, it's not something that every surgery has by any manner of means.
No.
And that systemic approach needs to be taken on board, which it often isn't in this country, because we're a nation of, I don't know, don't get me onto that one. I'll be off to get my double dose of paroxetine if I get onto that one.
Maybe that's one for another day. Do you think another week? Yeah. Just kind of touching on that, I guess, talking about that balance, kind of keeping, as we say, talk about the magic of sheds, kind of keeping that magic alive. We know the benefits of social prescribing and how it can help people, reducing the isolation, reducing the hospital admissions.
Doing the work on looking at the effectiveness as well, because we've got the fantastic narratives, and we'll start to generate some objective data, because these are the things that people will sit up and listen once you start coming back to them with reality. That's what we need. We need to be reality people for people in power and in Parliament. They have a clue.
Or do you think there's a risk of, that sheds or other, other community groups, I guess, may be kind of overwhelmed with referrals once, social prescribing is exactly, and then I guess the question is, then what happens? You lose that balance, maybe.
Well, I live in a quite nice area in Richmond, but I haven't been approached proactively by any single person who's got responsibility for social prescribing in our borough. I've made every single contact. Bar a couple, one called Rules and the other being the voluntary services, but nobody from the official, the NHS.
Okay.
And again, one has to keep going to these people. Why? Get them out of their offices. Get them coming to men's sheds.
Get them in the shed.
Yes. Stop asking all these questions. Then we can get on and do some work.
Yeah.
We don't need to reprove the concept of that breathing is really important for life. We don't have the National Institute guidelines on breathing, or taking.
There might be.
I mean, it's crazy.
There probably is.
And the more you proceduralize it, the further you get away from being able to deliver it.
Yeah, and kind of touching on that, sorry, I'm just said my microphone's a bit loud. And just touching on that point, talking about, Patrick's given some tips already about what, if agencies are going to social prescribe, what advice or tips would you give to them? How could they make this look better, or how could the process be improved in order, to keep sheds, as they should be, and kind of the magic of sheds alive? How could it be improved?
Well, I think this conversation really matters, if I might say so, and what Patrick's actually pulled all that together. And I mean, maybe a manifesto, if we're going to talk politics and if we're going to talk about changing the way this all works, and leaving people in power with absolutely no doubt whatsoever that these things don't happen just with worthy words, rhetoric, and policy statements.
Yeah, so it's actually getting people involved, as Patrick said.
Patrick has delivered a raft of amazing data and narratives which need to be brought to the attention of the people in power, because I mean, we're not all living in Frome, and I mean, Frome has had we've had all sorts of issues. I mean, God knows, I mean, talk about ecclesiastical, my God, I mean, we couldn't get insurance from ecclesiastical. We said, why can't we have the same insurance policy as the church we're posted in? But they said, oh, we don't do that. So I'm pleased to say we've got hold of Wessex. So we're dealing with Wessex, who I think insure about 50 men sheds, because these are all things that we could be tuning up. Because if we know we've got all these things in place, we won't have to waste all our time and effort and energy convincing people that we're really good.
Yeah.
It'll speak for itself. And I mean, the more that the UK Men's Shed Association can help at that level, strategic level, then we can become operationally much more effective.
Yeah, I think so. And
Rachel, can I just tell you a quick story to give you an idea?
Definitely.
Is an example. A while back, I met with one of the health connectors here in Frome, and they said, what's going on in the shed at the moment, Patrick? I said, well, actually, one of the guys, we're making a coffin for him. We had a good laugh about that. And she said, well, do you think it would be appropriate maybe for me to come down and talk about end-of-life planning as a result of you guys making a coffin? And the point was that us making the coffin meant that we had 5 or 6 people who were involved in talking about end-of-life, talking about, planning for end-of-life. And so the link worker, the health connector, came down and actually handed out, I think it was about a dozen end-of-life planning documents and talked people through it. And if only 1 or 2 people, completed that would have saved the NHS money, because they'd have talked about, do they want treatment under these circumstances? How do they want treatment? And so that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of engagement that works, but that can only work when there's a relationship. That does not work because somebody writes in a process that, end-of-life planning should be a key matter to deal with community groups,
and that's what Rob was talking about in the session previously. I don't know if you caught that when, Rob was talking about how to, people engaging with men coming into the sheds and, giving that information. If they do a talk in a church hall, nobody's going to turn up. But if that person goes along to the shed and they've got a relationship with them, it's so much more effective. And, we've only got a couple of... Go on, Chris.
Bring them onto our turf. I mean, this relational thing is really important. I'm involved quite by accident in an initiative which is all about how do we get relational working and relationships back into procurement of services. Right? There are 4 books in this series. This is the one about the social determinants of health, which is all about inequalities, and it's all about deprivation, all the things Michael Marmot talks about. The fact is, the biology of loneliness and the biology of poverty and everything else is exactly the same biology that gets activated by the COVID virus. And these things are, that's where we're at. So let's have some
totally linked, isn't it?
About how the things that Patrick's talking about need to be centre stage. And I mean, the Men's Sheds Association can plug itself into that in full confidence. Direction of travel.
I'm going to stop you there, Chris, because we've got 2 minutes left. But I think we did have a couple of comments earlier about, that people have enjoyed the discussion. So I don't know if you could pop a couple of those comments up. There was one, I think, right at the start as well.
Thank you, Marcel.
So thank you everybody for listening, and thank you Patrick and Chris for your thoughts. There's a lot of considerations for sheds to think about, and a lot of considerations for agencies to think about in terms of respecting the shed, getting the best benefits for the people who are attending, and also the best outcomes for the agencies themselves, I guess. So it's a lot to think about, but I think you made some really good points and a lot of good tips there, Patrick, as well, for how other organisations might improve that process. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm very happy to engage in any kind of correspondence or communication with the people if they've got interest in that, and or provide any of the sources to stuff that I've talked about this morning. I'm very happy to do that.
And I'd just like to say in my defence, I'm sorry I've rattled on a bit and got a bit sort of out of my cage, but one school report said, Manning, what can one say about this boy? He often guffaws where a smile would do. I'm sorry I go a bit over the top sometimes, but I think the Men's Sheds Association...
That's why we love you, Chris.
It saved my life. I was drowning in sorrow when my mother and my brother died in the same year, and I set up a men's shed in their honour, and it has saved my life. And I just think the Men's Sheds Association is absolutely fantastic, and it's my go-to.
And it's not just you. It's there's other people that will resonate with as well.
It's my go-to place, and it's given me something to live for. It's fantastic. That's how good it is.
We're happy to have you, Chris. So thank you very much for your input, and thank you, Patrick. Thanks,
Patrick.
And I think Charlie's coming on now. I think maybe.
Hello. Yes.
Here he is.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you, Chris. If there are any other questions, we do have a few minutes. Mainly because I was reading off the wrong schedule.
I think just a comment popped up there, Charlie. It might be worth just flashing it up. This one. Sorry, I've just put it up. Patrick, you might want to read this one.
Yeah, I mean, we care, but we're not carers. That's the issue. Yeah. People come along to the shed on a voluntary basis. Exactly. So you can't tell people to do this because you don't want people who are forced to attend.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things, though, Patrick, is a lot of people may come from a self-referral or the doctor just saying, go along to the shed, and it's bypasses this process. So.
You know, I've spoken to 2 people just recently, both working people, and they were terrified of going back into their offices. And one of the employers actually said to them, no, we really think you ought to return to the office at least 2 days a week. And she said, well, I don't really want to. And they said, well, we'd really like you to come in. And she came in, she spent all day there. She said, at the end of the day, I was ecstatic and hadn't realized how much I'd missed social interaction. And if I hadn't have been, you know, so I think it is quite a good thing for some people to say, you should attend the shed, you know, but it has to be done in a sensitive manner such that they have the opportunity to recognize the benefits rather than I'm attending because someone's told me to.
It's not right for everybody, is it? A shed won't be the answer for everybody.
No.
And the people can be quite aggressive as well. We've had we had a series of complaints from an NHS nurse and social services about a shed because they wouldn't take some people for them. And we're like, but why would they? Can you explain why they would take them? And their idea was completely wrong about what a shed was.
Well, you know, I have an example, a true story where somebody, actually a mental health worker brought someone to the shed and they said, look, we have to leave. And I said, well, I'd rather you didn't. They said, no, we have to leave. I said, well, look, is there anything about this individual I need to know about that before you go? She said, no, he looks to be fine. So she left. 10 minutes later, he started to sand something down. And one of the other shedders said, well, you want to use some removal liquid. So he got the sanding liquid off the shelf from the Kosh related cupboard, yellow painted with a anyway, and he started to use it. And I said, hold on a second, didn't you read the safety instructions? And he said, I can't read. And I said, well, in that case, I'm sorry, you cannot use that stuff. And he got very aggressive.
Yeah.
Now, you know, so there's a situation where you know that kind of stuff is fragile.
He wasn't supported to be there in the right context.
And I didn't know that he had anger management issues. And me saying you can't do that because you can't read the safety instructions. Let me run through it with you. Exasperated.
And that's the thing. I guess you know, every shed is different. This is the big takeaway, I suppose, for anybody thinking of prescribing somebody to shed, is that every shed is different. They will have their own rules, their own you know, amount of members, safety procedures. You know, it's totally up to contacting each shed individually and talking it through with them. You know, it won't be a blanket yes or no for every referral. You know, sheds might say no and they're allowed to say no. But it's having that conversation with the shed themselves about what's suitable for that person and for the shed.
Yeah, and to avoid the, I heard a story, how true it is, I'm not sure, but from a shed in the north where somebody was brought to the shed. No, fine, they're absolutely fine. They had Alzheimer's and went. They said, I've had enough now. I'm going to go. I need to go home. The shed said fine. The person wasn't seen again by the shed. And a couple of hours later, when social services came to meet him, they said, well, where's he gone?
Yeah, and that's a real worry, isn't it? You know, the shed is, I imagine that would be really upsetting for the shed members who can't stop that person leaving.
Exactly. I mean, the story I just told about the person who couldn't read, they left the shed, you know, and you know, it's untenable. But I mean, link workers need to work with the individual organisations to understand how the organisations work, and support them. I mean, the government document, statutory bodies should work with partners to create reasonable and safe referrals based on what matters to people, whilst minimising bureaucratic controls and working to overcome an overly risk-averse approach to local community development. You know, so they know this stuff, but at the same time they say, you know, our community groups, you know, doing referral check-ins on mental health, you know, etc., etc. It's just, you know, they've got to work. We've got to work together on this stuff, and it works. When you work together, it works.
Somebody once said that the spectator sees most of the game, and I think we have to accept that those of us who are like boundary spanners and going across all these different interfaces get a much clearer idea of the picture about how things are working or not, as indeed as the person who's maybe using services. They're the best people in the world to know exactly whether things are working or not. And that's where the feedback needs to come from, not from some mighty heavy consultancy that costs £1,500 a day per person. You know, it's us actually moving in this space who actually get a very, very good picture of how it's working or not. And the people using services have the same experience, and we should use that a lot more than we do.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, your point, you know, this is government guidelines. For example, people who need support with their mental health may be prevented from joining gardening groups because sharp tools are involved. You know, so it's all understood and recognised there. But the point is that the issue will be, well, why didn't you let him join the shed? This is, you know, unfair or unequal. Well, you know, we have to. So it's all here, and I absolutely support it. We just have to be, you know, we have to implement it on a sensible and practical, and
there is some
collaborative method.
Yeah,
thank you for your thoughts.
And there's some absolutely fantastic things that go on there. I mean, there's a shed, again, a shed not far from me, where they have a safe table where they've got one of their shedders who has dementia, and he's fully integrated. He's quite happy sanding down everyone's work for them, and they're very happy that he's doing that for them as well. But for them, but it's that shed has that capacity for that person, but wouldn't necessarily have the capacity for more. But you know, others have different needs as well. So yeah, thank you. It's yeah, absolutely, you know, fantastic what you
you
just
knew
talked
what my
about.
needs
And
were. You set up the shed movement, so that's good for me.
Chris, nobody
We've
knows
all
your
got
needs.
special needs. We're all special, like everybody else.
Absolutely. Right. Well, thank you. The next session is at 12 o'clock, where we're going to do the voting for the palette challenge. Some images have been going up on social media. We still have a complete communication blackout with the north of the UK, but we found a way. We're using a carrier pigeon, and we'll be able to put pictures up on the screen and use a telephone that's got a dial on, and then we'll be able to communicate with the Lion's Den in Keighley that way.
That's what it's like up north. It's what we. There's a miracle that I can speak to you today.
It's living in the Midlands. We don't have these problems. I know nobody recognises that we exist, but here we are. So yes, so we will be. We're going to play a video, and then we'll be coming back. So please don't go away. The images will be coming up. There will be a poll on Facebook to vote for your favourite designs and what they've made. And then there will be the opportunity on YouTube to vote by putting in the name of the shed you want to vote for. And then we'll collate the two, and then we'll confirm who the winner is. And the prize is a shed load of product from Ronseal. So we're very pleased that Ronseal were able to support this competition. And they'll all be able to paint all of their products when they get their prizes. So unless they've already done so. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Chris and Patrick.
Thank you, me, for not doing much. And we'll now queue up the video.
Bye.
Here's Jeff. Jeff. Maybe. Am I pressing Jeff? Sorry, everybody.
2014, when my wife's health had deteriorated so far, and I found myself living alone in a large house in a town that I didn't have a lot of social contacts, and that was a lonely time. Flyer went up in town saying, "Anybody fancy a men's shed?" And a handful of us got together, said it was a good idea, and within a few months had one up and running. Mentally, I believe I'm in a much better place than I was, but at the time I didn't know how bad it was. I very rapidly and still find the shed something to get up for, something to get onto, and something to deal with, and that's a lot better. In retrospect, I've spent far less time at the doctor's than I did in the time leading up to the shed, and my visits there weren't always to do with my wife. They were certainly to do with my own physical health, which certainly has held at bay the ravages of old age, if not entirely stopped things. But yeah, I am aware that I'm more active, more alert, more fulfilled in myself. This place where you feel safe, socially safe, this place where essentially you can do what you want. There's no one telling you what to do, because most sheds are very eclectic and very flat organisation. And so, yeah, we can get up to all sorts of things. It's great fun. It's finding your youth again, almost. It's great. Yeah, just before lockdown came along, we were turning out 100+ community projects a year, from little fix-its to quite major things. We've built a working trebuchet to fire bowling balls 100 metres for a children's home up in Moffat. We've built from scratch a replica 100-year-old car that was first produced in Dalbeattie. We do 3D printing, pyrography, leathercraft, picture framing, dye sublimation printing, metalwork, welding, lots and lots of woodwork. Yeah, we're busy. Dalbeattie Shed has had about 80 people signed up over the years. We're in our 7th year. Going into lockdown, we had 42 active members. Our average age was 74. And we're hoping to reopen fairly shortly. And we're hoping to see most of those back. The shed, what has it done? It reconnected me to the community. We're a working shed and we make things for the community, lots of things. And so, yeah, not only is there something to do, there's some new friends, there's some nice toys to play with, some lovely machines, and you know, it rejuvenates you. It takes years off you.
This is a man. This is a shed. Take a man to a shed. Take more men to a shed. What are they doing? Building. What are they building? Man stuff. Woodwork, metalwork, glasswork, painting, gardening, 3D printing, upcycling, but wait. They'll build something far more important. They'll build connections, friendships, community. Men's sheds reduce depression, isolation, and loneliness. Men's sheds promote health and well-being for men. Create, converse, connect. Hey man, come build with us.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Here. Hi, John.
Hello there. It's been a good
So-
morning, I see. I've been listening to it pretty much all morning.
Good. So it's already up on social media from the sheds. And as I said in the last session, we've got Carrier Pigeon coming with some images from the Lion's Den shed. And then we will be moving to a vote, but we'll both be interviewing the sheds and having a chat with them. I'll take, if it's okay, John, the one up north, because it's less distance for the pigeon to travel.
Exactly.
And so, John, if you want to have a chat, I wonder what they've made. I know what they talked about making, but I'm quite interested to see.
I should just sort of perhaps admit a bit of that I'm in Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes is kind of in Buckinghamshire, so of course there'll be no bias, of course.
No nepotism. Okay, and
they're here. Hello. Hello there. You having a good day?
Yeah, we're doing fine. Yeah, no hospitalisations so far.
No good. No injuries
Not even
then.
any minor injuries. Yeah.
Oh, good. Which is pretty good for working with pallets, in my experience. They either splinter or you have horrible nails to get out.
Still, frantically working away in the background. we have got some.
You're a bit quiet.
Yeah.
If you can hear me.
Overcome the sound of our dust extractor.
Ah, yes, the that lovely wine.
Yeah. Let me just see if I can reorient.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Better. Yeah.
So what have you been making?
We have been making. I'll bring it into view.
Sure.
I'm not sure whether you can see it very well. Let's see if I can.
I could certainly see it in the distance. That's looking like a bench of some description.
It's a potting. We said we would make a potting bench, and that is what we have made.
This is very good.
We're just in the finishing stages now, just putting a shelf on the bottom of it.
Okay.
We if we have time, are we still looking for a 3-hour cut-off on this, or are we supposed to finish?
Yes.
So we didn't start to.
It may take us another 3 hours to get in touch with Lion's Den, but we live in hope.
Okay, so we didn't start till 10:15. So
No.
We'll finish the potting table shortly, and then we're going to move on to what do we call it? A wheelbarrow for a wheelbarrow planter.
A wheelbarrow planter. Oh, that's quite an advanced thing to do in 15 minutes. Unless you've got some bits. The bits I made earlier, are they?
I've got a compressor going in the background now as well.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, I can hear you've got a pinner going, have you? So I'm lucky. I've been to your shed before, so I have a vague sort of. That's the big bit at the back, the double height bit at the back of the building, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the woodwork shop, and then metalwork shop is
Sort of between there and the staircase. Yeah, that's right. I remember that. I see you've got one of those very nice double axial motion Bosch chop saws. I saw in one of your photographs earlier.
Made an investment in that a couple of years ago, and it's in almost constant use.
Do you find it really does the job?
Yeah, it really does. Well, that in combination with the new table saw that we bought last year,
right,
do most jobs. Well, and we've got the bandsaw as well over the back. So
yeah,
cutting operations are very straightforward now.
Yeah. And do you find the dust extract works on that chop saw?
Yeah, reasonably well. Yeah.
When
you've got a
it's
different.
switched on.
Yeah, when it's switched on, it's.
When it's switched on, yeah.
Wired into the switch now, so it comes on automatically. Yeah.
Okay. I have that problem in my shed too sometimes.
But we have actually had a dust filter, air filter donated to us, which we're thinking of installing because.
Is it one of these sort of ones you hang off the ceiling?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't fixed it yet.
If I compare with my shed, which is in a 20-foot shipping container, you have a bit more air volume to disperse the dust into.
We do, true, but that means that we have more space that it settles onto.
I was going to say yes.
Yeah.
The problem with racking is it all slowly but surely gets covered in dust, doesn't it?
Absolutely right. Yeah, terrible. Yeah, we've just had to deal with a woodworm problem as well in the wood on the racking, on the hardwood.
Oh dear.
Oh, yeah.
And pesky little creatures have been infesting you, have they?
They have, yeah, but we think.
Well, they like it, but I guess probably worse when the shed is it's been empty for so long during the lockdown. I think they like it quiet, don't they?
Yeah, that would have made a difference, I'm sure. Got my thumb over
yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to ask us?
What sort of? So you're in the process. So you've got a wood turning set up there as well, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, there's a couple of wood lathes over the back there. I think you can see one of them there in the.
Yeah. In the far distance, yeah.
We've got a couple of metal lathes as well, and a milling machine. So we're very well set up, really.
You are. So have you got a sort of I can see what looks remarkably like a compressed air hose reel there hanging up off that rack.
That's fine.
So have you got
Yeah.
So have you got a setup, you know, with a fixed compressor and a pipework system?
Sorry, John, you have to repeat that one. The
So
compressor.
your compressed air, have you got like a fixed compressor somewhere, then a pipework system?
As soon as you start to use a nail gun, the compressor fires up and it's all good.
You need to buy a quiet compressor.
Yeah, well, that's not on the shopping list at the moment. We just have to put up with the noise. But...
Yeah, so I know the feeling. I've got my shed at the moment has got the world's noisiest compressor.
Yeah.
They're practically, especially inside a container, it's practically unusable.
I can imagine in a container it would be pretty appalling.
Yeah. Do you find I mean, I know we set you this pallet challenge today for hopefully a bit of fun. I'm hoping it was a bit of fun. Do you find you actually use pallet wood a great deal?
Yeah, a fair amount. Yeah. It's just, I mean, the main challenge of the pallet challenge today was actually the pallet dismantling.
Yeah, precisely.
There must be. I couldn't believe how many nails there were in it.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things because if they're using an auto repeat type nail gun, you suddenly find where 2 would have done, they put 7.
Absolutely, that's right. So it took 2 of us the best part of 45 minutes to dismantle a pallet this morning, but we aren't using the bits of it, so it was worthwhile. Yeah.
Yes. I know exactly that problem. It's not one of my favourite jobs, dismantling pallets. I seem to not be that good at it. I end up with a lot of splintered wood.
Yeah, I did come across a YouTube video the other day, which was how to dismantle a pallet in 5 minutes. It's easy with a jigsaw. But I haven't got around to looking.
You haven't had the 5 minutes yet.
Right. Yeah, it has felt a bit like that the last week, I must say. Yeah.
Yes. So how many days is Milton Keynes open now?
Well, it's not officially open today. We're open, three core days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Right.
Until late, because the makerspace come in the evenings, and then we quite often open on a Sunday afternoon as well.
Right. And when I was there the last time I was there, you had both model railways and I think it was model aircraft sort of.
Yeah.
Are they still pretty active?
We've still got both of those. Yeah, we've got renewed interest. I'm trying to go somewhere quiet. We've got renewed interest in railway now. Unfortunately, we've lost a few. The aero modelers have rather. We've only got really 2 aero modelers left, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we'd be keen to attract some more aero modelers if we can.
Yeah.
I think the thing is with these rather slightly specialised interests, they have their own clubs. There's a model railway society in Milton Keynes. There's an aero modelers club, and the majority of those guys, I guess, and girls tend to go to those specialist clubs rather than to us, which is more general. Although, of course, we do offer a lot of space for working on things that people don't necessarily have in their own homes.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of equipment that people may not have.
And equipment, that's right.
Exactly. I think that's one of the advantages of the men's shed sort of system, is that certainly one of the reasons I joined was because it offers me access to kit that I don't particularly want a lathe at home that much, to be honest, but it's useful to have access to one.
If I had a lathe at home, it would be in a freezing cold garage, and I probably wouldn't want to work on it very much. Yeah.
No, I agree, and also you end up with perhaps a cheaper one than you would otherwise have, so it's not as powerful or not as capable or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. My own shed just been offered an Axminster lathe, which arrived in various bits over a couple of week period. It's a 1999 one. You actually sit and look at it in a bit of detail. You realise that they're selling essentially the same one even now, and the parts are essentially interchangeable. So even old stuff like that, it's completely usable.
Yeah, and we're finding the same with metal lathes as well. We've got a couple of Myford lathes and a lot of interchangeable parts that, going back almost to the turn of the last century. Some of them, I think.
Yeah, I suppose you just got to remember that some bits are going to be metric and some bits are going to be imperial.
You need
I'm
to
trying
select
not to mix the two up.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that they are getting somewhere with Lion's Den, but I haven't seen anyone come on, so I'm sort of going to carry on talking. And you might want to pass me on to somebody else if you get bored talking to me.
Later.
So they're currently zipping through making the wheel. Is this something you've made regularly in the past?
No, not neither of the things we're making today are things that we've made in the past. But Dave, who's kind of directing operations, he doesn't ever draw up plans or anything. He just sees these things in his head, and then builds.
Right. Well, that's all right when you're on your own. It's a bit more tricky when you're perhaps trying to work as a small team.
It's possibly not his strong suit, but
Well,
amazing how you can just see it. You can just see exactly what he wants to build and how it should be built, and he just does it straight off. Yeah.
Well, I can do that with small things. I'm not sure I'll try and do that with something as complicated as a wheelbarrow. There's normally there'd be a few angles in it. That might be might make it a bit trickier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Dave explained to me what he wanted to do, and I said, well, I'll go away and make a start. But I lost the plot fairly quickly. I'd have to go back very regularly to say, what was it you wanted me to do again, kind of thing. But
Yeah. Well, we've got some of your photographs. Shall we put a few of those up, and I'll put you off the spot for a minute, and I'll talk people through the photographs for a few minutes.
Okay.
Once Leo has the pictures up in banners, I can come on. Oh, right, okay. So there might be we may have to wait a second or so. I'm reading the chat between the back office team and me. Oh, here's a photograph, and that's who are the two guys in that photograph?
That's Dave that I was just telling you about, and John Weir, who is also one of our stalwart members. He's an engineer basically. So he's very skilled in both the metalwork and woodwork.
I'm very capable.
None of these people who can look at a job and see exactly what needs doing, what tools you need, and how to go about it. So yeah, very useful member of the shed, and we'll help anybody out with anything. So
yes,
yeah.
And there we are. That's a fairly substantial hammer he's got in his hand. Oh, he's knocking the pallet apart. I was going to say, why does he need such a big hammer? But I can see why now. Yes, they are quite resistant, aren't they? I suppose they have to be.
Yeah, well, of course they're carrying pretty heavy weight. Some of them. Yeah.
No, they can do. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see a series of standardized links coming together. Yeah, there's that big.
The chop saw operation.
I think the words "well jealous" come to mind. Use perhaps a phrase more appropriate to someone who's 20 rather than 65 like me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they are something I'd like to when we've got a bit more space, and I'm hoping to get some more space in my shed in the next year. So
yeah. Well, I don't think we'll be making any big capital investments for a while to come now, because I should appreciate our finances have taken a bit of a hit over the last year because
of course, yeah. Do you actually do much? Do you actually do make to sell very much?
Not to sell to the public generally. What we do is community projects. So
right.
I mean, what we've done in the last, well, we're about to do a project for a local primary school where they've asked us to. They've got a kind of an open shed type building shelter in the garden, and they want boxes in for them, so it's more weather resistant.
Yes.
All year round, rather than just in the summer.
Well,
so
Charles, back in the house.
Ask for a donation. Usually,
yeah.
Things.
Because you've got quite a lot of members, so I guess you get a trickle of income from your membership fees from them. So.
Well, it has to be more than a trickle, otherwise we'd go under.
Yeah. Because you pay rent for that shed, presumably, that building.
Pay about £6,000 a year rent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, that's quite heavily subsidised.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine it would be.
Yeah,
because it's owned by a community foundation, isn't it?
It is. That's right. Yeah. So we've got we've got a bid in at the moment for an extension to the rent subsidy, but there's an awful lot of work involved.
Yes, there's quite a lot of competition as well for the limited funds, as they usually are.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie's come back on screen, so I'm going to just ask Charlie, what's going on with Lion's Den, Charlie?
Well, the pigeons have flown in. I had to open the window. They're a little bit damp, but they've come with the pictures, and I should have Alan on the telephone now. Alan, are you there?
I am, Charlie. Yes.
Okay, and can people hear that in the studio? Yes, good. Alan, say hello to everybody, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry about the earlier link. We are in a bit of a black spot up here for broadband.
Yeah, it all worked well when we tested it 2 days ago, didn't it?
I know, it's sod's law.
It's probably those carp, or your fish that you've got there, or your koi.
Well, I think those southerners have been up and sabotaged us.
Well, do you know, they've got somebody apparently in the shed that's there for MK that's from Leeds. So
well, there you go, you see.
yeah, we should. He should have been social distancing. So I've got some images of what you've been doing. How have you found it this morning?
Very, very hectic. With cutting the time down by half an hour, it really pushed us to the limit. But all the lads have been pulling together really well.
That's right. Okay, so there's a flat cap. There's a picture there of a flat cap.
Gotta have the flat caps, Yorkshire.
Yeah. No stereotype.
As they say, that'll do.
Oh, and I like the product placement of the screws as well. And you.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, in fact, I have to be honest and say every project we've done this morning has been using tight fit screws. And a big thank you to Richard Rhodes for those.
Yeah, that's.
And I would also like to say a big thank you to Ronseal, because although we haven't used the product yet, these products will be finished off using Ronseal products.
Well, and you know, particularly if you win, you'll be getting some of those as well. So,
that'd be nice. Yeah, that'd be really
some
nice.
Replacements on there.
Come on, all you Northerners, start voting.
Yes, and people can vote. It's live now on YouTube, and on Facebook to vote, and you can also vote on YouTube by sending in the name of the shed when you see both products that they've created. The shed that they've done, and I think we've now moved on to, it looks like a chair. Talk us through it.
Yes. Well, basically, when I used to do craft fairs, I used to make children's replica 17th century lambing chairs, and put a bit of toy storage under the seat. And it just suddenly struck me that we could make a rustic one using pallet wood. And I just at this point, I would like to say a really big thank you to Brookbank Valves in Keighley for the donation of all the pallets that we've used. But yeah, so I drew up the plans in the week, and the first thing this morning, I mean, it was hectic on the planer thicknesser, because all this pallet wood was being chopped through the planer thicknesser straight onto the bench for marking out and cutting. But the chair itself, we didn't quite get the tinny compartment on the right-hand side. But on the left-hand side, we got the wine bottle and glasses rack.
Yeah, we're looking at that at the moment.
It's all ready for summer's drinks.
That's a very good attachment to have on there. I could have done with that last night.
Yeah, and the strange thing, I don't drink.
And we've got another. This looks like a frame with. Is it a planter?
Yeah, that was thanks to Pete. He's our engineer member. And what it is, that frame, no matter what angle you put it up against the wall at, all the plant pot holders will actually, they're like on a gimbal. So they'll just find the right level. So they'll always be upright. Did a great job on that.
That's excellent. That's a really good thing.
Yeah.
I like that. Have you, will you be sharing your plans for these?
We may very well, actually. Because once we've finished, we'll be drawing these up in a more definite plan, so that other members can use them and make stuff in the future.
Yeah, no, these are absolutely excellent. These are, very, very impressive indeed. Very impressive indeed.
Yeah,
well, one of our architect members, he's Jim. He designed and made the wall attachment bird table. We've had Ernest doing the bird box. We had Dave doing the attachment planter. Rob was doing the back box. And if I've missed anybody, my apologies. But, and Paul's been taking all the photos and sending them up to Facebook. And again, the link just wasn't working right, so we couldn't email the photos direct. But I think we've got them all up there, the main thing.
Yeah, very good. Well, the votes are starting to come in, so that's good.
Well, we've thoroughly enjoyed it this morning. It's been the best day we've had since the lockdown and everything started.
Really?
And it was brilliant to have all the lads helping. It's the first time we've all come down together and more or less worked together, but just trying to social distance. Apart from the photos, we were trying to socially distance and stuff like that, you know.
We have a question now. This is from a person that was trying to enter, unfortunately wasn't able to in the end, who'd got together some like 600 pallets himself ready, but because of COVID restrictions wasn't able to. But he's asked the question. This is from Tony Smith-Crallan. How many pallets have you used there?
We used about 3.5 of the 4 that we had. And the half that's left, really, there was a pallet that was a special one, and it had some ply on the top, and we were hoping to incorporate the ply into the chair for the side panel for the tinnies. So we used about 3.5, but the pallets were quite big ones. Right. They weren't your standard Euro-size pallets. Brooks Bank Valves, who gave us a pallet, they get a lot of machinery in from the Middle East and Far East. So they tend to be oddball pallets, really.
Okay.
You know, maybe, I mean, we've even had 3 metre long ones, but these were about 2 metres by 800, and it just afforded enough for us to do everything we've got, really.
Yeah. Cool. And we've got MK up as well now at the moment. So don't forget you can vote for yourselves as well, boys, in the north and the south. It might be a bit of more of a problem for the northerners. But we have had a comment through one vote, which I won't say which way it's gone, but we're voting for the north because we're northerners, which was
good for them. Come on, Scotland as well. And Northern Ireland, because it says north in Northern Ireland.
It does. Yeah. So right, the votes are still coming through. Oh, and we've got those through now as well. That's good. Okay, so we're asking people to. Sorry, go on.
I was just saying, I'm looking forward to seeing Milton Keynes' work this morning because, unfortunately, as I say, we haven't been able to get a link. So when I get home, I'm going to go on YouTube and hopefully be able to watch it back. I'm sure they've done very well, and I wish them well. I don't fully wish them all the votes, but I do wish them well. I wish them a really good second place. No, I'm sure we've all had fun because we've had a blast this morning.
Oh, good. And John, you were talking with MK. I don't know if we can get them back. How have they felt? Have they? Sorry, Nigel. Have you found it coming back to the shed and doing the project, working together on something which you might not have been doing for a while?
Well, I mean, it's been great. We've actually been open with COVID safety restrictions in place since April. So so being here today isn't a great novelty, but it's been great working with these 2 guys. Because as I explained earlier, this is not one of our normal opening days. So we're the only people around. So we've come in specially to do this. But yeah, we've had good fun, and we've produced. Can I get it? Trying to line it up with the. You can see bits of the. You can see the top of the.
Well, if you stand further back.
Yeah, if I stand further back, yeah. So that's what we've produced so far, and we've now started work on the planter barrow, which is in bits somewhere on the bench. Yeah.
Right. So that is
a rather less ambitious an artistic project than the Lion's Den, but we've still had fun doing it. What we didn't have fun doing was dismantling the pallet operation, which is an absolute pain. As I said to John, I've never seen so many nails in my life. All very deeply embedded, but we got it apart in the end, and are now using the bits. And there should be some photos which I sent through of what we've been up to.
Yeah, we've done that. I think because we were. Did you get Nigel? Did you get the email that we were finishing at 12:30 rather than 1 o'clock?
Yes, I did.
You did, cool. So you got 4 more minutes then.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to finish the planter barrow in 4 minutes.
Okay. Well, you're going to show it. Cool. Okay. So the votes are coming in. We will give it 3 more minutes for the votes coming in, and then we will make an announcement when we've added them all up, and we have some people in the back room. We've got our own Carol Vorderman or Rachel Riley.
Can I just say, are the people in the back room from the south or the north? Will there be a challenge to the count?
Well, you've got Laura doesn't come very well. She's quite far south, but she did come from the north originally. So.
All right. Is Rachel helping? She's from the north.
Rachel can't count.
Excuse me.
Well, just while we're on, a big reminder to
Charlie.
everyone that might see this or might pick it up. You can just go onto YouTube this evening and type ShedFest 2021, and all the links will come up, so you can watch everything back.
Yes, no, absolutely, yes. You'll be able to watch all of this back on ShedFest 2021 for the YouTube channel when it comes up. And people will be able to watch it. Rachel disagreed with the fact about counting. There is a request here to
I have voted as well, Charlie. Please tell Alan I voted.
Yeah, we're all sat here not being able to get a link to vote for ourselves.
Oh, well,
How about that?
Rachel has said that she's voted.
All I'll say is I'm in the north, so.
Yeah, and I think she may have some bias there. There's
well, maybe a little bit. But I think there's more sheds in the south. That's what worries us.
That's what worries you, yes. And yes.
Obviously, it crept up the country, you see.
Yeah. So, MK, there was a question about seeing the parts of your planter. Is it possible to not the plant? Yeah, the planter, the wheelbarrow planter.
Well, I saw them using that, so I must have cut all those curves.
Sorry, Nigel. Are there any parts of your planter that you could see, or?
Well, you can see all of it, I think, if I can get it on screen. Is that?
So the barrow.
That's the posting bench, isn't it?
That's the planter.
I thought,
okay. And the barrow?
Started from scratch this morning.
Yeah, we're assuming that we were expected to start absolutely from scratch this morning.
We know.
Yes.
So so that's what we did.
Yeah. And I think that's what Alan did as well. Started from scratch, didn't you, Alan?
Yeah. Yeah. We dismantled 3, and we dismantled the 4th this morning. Should have been live, but we ended up just taking some pictures.
Yeah.
And then everything headed straight to the planer thicknesser. Scanned first with the wand, make sure there's no metal in them.
Yeah.
So the first half hour was literally just firing everything through the planer thicknesser. And then Pete and myself, who were doing the biggest 2 projects, we then went straight on to marking out and cutting. And then the other lads started using their plans that had drawn up earlier in the week and started cutting and assembling various things like the bat box, the bird box, bird table, the plant holders as well.
Okay.
In fact, the simplest thing was the last thing to finish, and that was the plant holders.
Yeah.
The hanging ones.
Yeah, they're very, very good.
Well,
as is that planter.
We are impressed, I have to admit.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a blast, and I'm sure once I see all the things that the Milton Keynes have made, we'll be in awe of them as well.
Right, I did want to ask. Please, let's make this draw a draw. As MK worked with a skeleton crew.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
You don't get much further south as well than Guernsey.
Yeah.
So it's,
well, no, that's true. Is Marcel okay? Is he
yes,
on?
that was Marcel. Yes, that was Marcel's message.
Oh, yeah.
So.
I love his beard.
Okay, right. Are we there? Are the votes counted? We don't need to know the actual vote. We just need to know the winner. There are prizes for both sheds, though. I should add. We're not going to be.
We're temporarily minding them all at the moment.
Oh yes, MK. I have to say as well, have been temporarily minding them all. When the product came from Ronseal, or when they said it was coming, I said, "Oh yeah, I can store that in my garage." Until they told me how much, and then it was, "What's the biggest shed I know?" So there's a fair amount of product for both sheds. Laura, are we ready? Do you want to come onto the screen and tell us? And I need to hold you near to my earphone so Alan can also hear it.
Are you in a tent, Laura?
I'm not in a tent. I've just got a background up to completely hide all the mess of my kitchen that my toddler's at this morning. Guys, what you've made is amazing. I am absolutely astounded by what you can do in such a short space of time. I think I have totaled it right. I've thrown it in the comments for someone else to just double check my maths, just in case. I mean, my granddad was a maths teacher and taught me both GCSE and A-level maths, so I probably should be able to count up votes. But I make it. Are we announcing the winner now, Charlie?
Yes. We can announce the winner.
I was going to say, my vote counting says it goes to
Drum roll.
Lion's Den.
Hooray!
Alan.
Congratulations, Alan.
Congratulations, Alan. Lion's Den won.
Yeah, well deserved.
Who won, sorry?
You did.
Oh, well. I mean, commiserations to Milton Keynes. I'm looking forward to seeing their stuff tonight. And a big thank you to all our members for helping out, because it has been absolutely manic. I'm sat in my rocking chair, rocking back and forward now, absolutely shattered. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We got space for drinks.
Thank you for the UK MSA for, again, doing a fantastic job with the virtual ShedFest. And let's hope next year we can have the normal ShedFest and hopefully the Northern Woodworker Show have a presence there as well.
Yeah.
So Charlie and all the team, Leo, all the team in the background, thank you very much, because you do a fantastic job for us.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Well done. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Nigel, for taking up the mantle and doing the challenge. Would you do it again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think
Tiring, but fun.
Nigel?
We'd get a bigger team together next time, undoubtedly.
Bigger team, a bigger workshop.
No, I don't think we need any more. We don't need more space. We just need more people. Yeah. And more planar thicknesses, I think.
More planar thicknesses. That's what they need. Yes, your planar thicknesser works, but your internet doesn't. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Next time we do anything like this, we should have full broadband in here. Because we're going through the motions now. It just wasn't quick enough.
Yeah. No worries. No worries. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much to Nigel as well. We'll say. And your team, yes, and to your team as well, Alan. So thank you. We will be in touch, and we'll now hand over to John. John, how do you think it's gone?
Well, I've listened to virtually the whole of today's Shedcast. I haven't managed quite so much on Tuesday and Wednesday, but I think it's gone very well overall today. I'm very impressed with the work that Lion's Den had put in, the photographs we could see, and certainly the Milton Keynes put up a valiant effort, but I think they lost out to a slightly superior team personally. It's this has been our second online ShedFest. We did one last year in 2020. There's been 3 days of celebration of the sorts of things that sheds can do, the effect we can have in our communities, the celebrating some of our partnerships with people like the Blind Woodturner yesterday, and also I think celebrating some of the, giving us some educational information about what you can do in your shed. So yesterday with Peter Sefton and the dovetailing video, for example. So it's been, I hope the people who've managed to sit through all of these have enjoyed it and have got something useful out of it. I'd like to thank the team of supporters, the volunteers, the presenters, the staff presenters, so Charlie and his staff team, for all the work they've done to get this off the ground. It's not an easy task. I realise that. And thank you to all of the viewers now and in the future, because we're going to be chopping this into a series of shorter videos when putting those up on our YouTube channel. And as I've just seen a great comment from Marcel down in Guernsey. Guernsey Shed will give you a run for your money next year, and I hope we do. We'll hope they do. But next year, with any luck, we'll be face to face back in Worcester or somewhere similar. I'm hoping that you've really enjoyed these last 3 days. I certainly have enjoyed the bits that I've managed to get to see, and I'm going to leave it there. Thank you, one and all. Thank you to Shed chairman, Shed treasurers, Shed secretaries, workshop leaders across the country for all that you do to keep the sheds going. I know it's not been an easy year for many of us. I'd also like to thank all the various local supporters, the Shed networks, people like Essex Shed Network and Norfolk Shed Network, who've been instrumental, and Sheds Cymru and the other regional groups who've managed to keep shedding going over this last year. So I'm going to sign off now, one and all, and look forward to meeting you face to face next year. Speak to you soon.
I bought a shed, I took it home, and I erected it. I bought a shed, I took it home, I'd selected it. I bought a shed, I bought a shed, I bought a shed. I followed the instructions, studied all the plans, worked day and night to get it right with blisters on my hands. And when I put the roof on and finished off the floor, I knew inside my heart of hearts I'd be ignorant no more. I heard a no inside my shed, I suspected it. I felt a no inside my shed, I detected it. I was so scared of what he said that I rejected it. He said, forget about the tarot, the I Ching and the runes. Get down your garden centre on a Sunday afternoon. Go past the cafeteria, blast all the flower beds. If you're searching for enlightenment, get straight for the sheds. And so we lived inside our shed, and we respected it. I taught him, and he taught me, and we perfected it.